That's still our position.
Well, you heard from the Prime Minister earlier and the Foreign Secretary in the House this week. We wanted to see particularly the nuclear threat from Iran resolved through diplomacy.
It's claimed Ed Miliband led resistance to any UK involvement in the conflict. Tim Shipman, the journalist who reported a disagreement at the National Security Council, says it's unprecedented.
I can't think of a single occasion where a sitting Prime Minister who wanted to do something on a matter of war or peace was not able to carry his war cabinet with him. You know, we just heard from Claire Shaw. Obviously, various people resigned over the Iraq war, but that didn't mean that Blair wasn't able to get his way.
President Trump's reportedly said Sir Keir Starmer should be allowing America the use of UK bases without question or hesitation. He's also said he must be involved in picking Iran's next supreme leader. It's after the US and Israel killed Ali Khamenei in strikes on Saturday. Today's seen a sixth day of strikes on Iran and counterattacks, including the hitting of a US tanker. Debris from Iranian drones intercepted over Dubai damaged two of the city's luxury hotels over the weekend. Freddie Maidens was staying nearby.
A lot of other guests were obviously pushing the buttons of the lifts, trying to get down in the lift. We got to the lobby and we rushed down into the basement. Everyone was crying, some people were praying, people were quite upset. And we actually then ended up spending the night sleeping on cushions in the basement.
In other news, we've just heard Donald Trump is replacing Kristi Noem as the US Homeland Security Secretary. It follows criticism of her presiding over the activities of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. The Home Secretary's defended her migration reforms, insisting Labour shouldn't be tempted to become more green or more reform. They'd see refugees needing a review of their status every 30 months. A rapist has been convicted of intentionally giving 7 men HIV. Adam Hall, who's 43 from the Washington area near Sunderland, didn't listen to doctors or take medication and transmitted the virus through unprotected sex. Ofwat is planning to fine South East Water £22 million over water supply failures between 2020 and 2023. More than 250,000 homes in Kent and Sussex were hit by supply problems. And Britney Spears has spent the night in prison after being arrested in California. She was held for driving under the influence but has since been released. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 162 points at 10,405. The pound buys $1.33, €1.14. LBC weather, patchy rain edging southeast with brighter, fresher conditions following. Lows between -2 and 10 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening to you. It's 4 minutes past 7. I'm Iain Dale with you until 10. Don't forget you can watch our programme, the whole 3 hours of it, on the LBC app, Global Player, or the LBC YouTube channel. Now, we're going to be convening a panel on Cross Question at 8 o'clock, and we're going to concentrate on the conflict in the Middle East. We've got 4 people who know their onions about what's happening in the Middle East. So if you've got any questions you want to put to them, you can put to them to our panel after 8. But let's start off with, I think, what is turning out to be a very clear dividing line in British politics, where you have the Prime Minister on one hand giving a press conference today, where he seems to have no regrets about the way that he's handled this conflict so far. And we can go into why he thinks that in a moment with Natasha Clark, our political editor. But Kemi Badenoch, I think, has really made this dividing line quite stark today by arguing that the RAF must take offensive action to destroy Iranian missile sites and prevent further attacks on British interests, because we know that there have been attacks on Cyprus and indeed Bahrain. And I think this will divide public opinion. I think my honest view, and you won't be surprised by this, is that she's absolutely right. I think when British interests are attacked, there needs to be a response to that. And so far there hasn't been, apart from saying, "Oh, we'll send a ship in about 10 days' time." That doesn't cut it. And I think if any of you have read Tim Shipman's article in The Spectator this week, I think the Daily Telegraph have printed it as well, you will see the international reaction to Britain's response to this conflict over the last 6 days. And let's put it this way, it ain't pretty. He gave a press conference this afternoon, which some people are suspecting was in response to Tim Shipman's article. We'll never know the truth of that, I suspect. But I am very unconvinced by what the government has done here. I don't necessarily only blame the government, though. I do blame military strategists, because why, when we knew that these attacks were coming several weeks ago, or we certainly knew when Donald Trump asked Keir Starmer for permission to use British bases, we knew that 2 weeks ago. Why haven't any British ships or planes been deployed to the Middle East in advance? Now, Keir Starmer announced that he's sending 4 planes to Qatar, a whole 4. I mean, this does not show Britain in the greatest light. The Jordanians are absolutely, to quote a Jordanian source to Tim Shipman, effing furious about Britain's lack of response. The Cypriot government have a similar reaction. We are now left in the humiliating position of not having any British ships around Cyprus. It's left to the Greek Navy to send 2 of their warships. I mean, how humiliating is that? So I want to know, is Kemi Badenoch right, or is Keir Starmer right? 0345 6060 973. Natasha, welcome. What's happened today?
It's been such a busy day, hasn't it? So yes, I was at that Downing Street press conference this afternoon, which Keir Starmer called quite hastily, as you rightly point out. Now, I don't think it was in response to Tim Shipman's article, but I do think it was partly in response to some of the criticism that he and the government have been getting in the last 48 hours that we have not been doing enough for our partners in the Gulf. And you're absolutely correct. They are pretty fuming about this. I've spoken to some people in government earlier today about this, and they say that they are asking us to do more and have been asking us to do more since the weekend. And it's fair to say that all of them are asking slightly different things. But, you know, their argument is we are hosting your British bases in our countries at great risk to us and to our citizens. And we need you to step up and we need you to do more. So I think that's partly why the Prime Minister called this press conference today. He addressed the media at Downing Street and announced and confirmed the extent of the UK's military response.
Best way forward for the regime and the world is a negotiated settlement with Iran where they give up their nuclear ambitions. Now, that's why I took the decision that the UK would not join the initial strikes on Iran by the US and Israel. Now, that decision was deliberate. It was in the national interest, and I stand by it. But when Iran started attacking countries around the Gulf and the wider region, the situation changed. I can announce today that we're sending 4 additional Typhoon jets to join our squadron in Qatar. Wildcat helicopters with anti-drone capabilities are arriving in Cyprus tomorrow. We're deploying HMS Dragon to the Mediterranean. And we have allowed the US to use British bases to conduct defensive operations to take out Iranian missiles before they're fired at our people and our allies.
And Iain, he went on to essentially say, and to come back to some of that criticism by saying, look, we've been working on this for several weeks. This wasn't just announced on Saturday, and we didn't just hear of it then. Of course, we've been reading about what the Cabinet thought about those decisions before they were taken and what may or may not be have said behind the scenes. However, he has been arguing, look, we've been stepping up military deployment at these bases since January. That's what he's been saying. And again, I think he basically just wanted to come out today and say, these are all the things that I am doing. There is, of course, criticism that it is too slow. And I think many people will absolutely think that, you know, HMS Dragon should have been sent far, far earlier than indeed it has. And it's not even left Portsmouth yet. So there is some legitimate criticism there and there is some anger. And I think the Prime Minister also wanted to address the repatriation issue too. We've got one flight now finally taken off 18 hours late. It's still not quite sure exactly what happened there. They're blaming technical issues. Obviously, it's very difficult to fly people out of a war zone. The Prime Minister said today this is going to be a bigger evacuation than Afghanistan. He also, I think, sort of hinted that this is going to go on for a while. I don't think it's going to be a quick, short, sharp, protracted, short and sharp sort of attack like anybody first thought. I think this is going to go on a long time. I think the Prime Minister was paving the way a little bit for that. And finally, Iain, he was also, of course, asked about the special relationship. We've seen that deteriorate down the pan in the last couple of days. When questioned about President Trump's seething comments about him not being Churchill, the Prime Minister was firm in his reaction.
Look, the special relationship is in operation right now. We're working with the Americans in the deployment from our bases. We are working together in the region, the US and the British working together to protect both the US and the British in joint bases where we're jointly located, and we're sharing intelligence on 24/7 basis in the usual way. That is the special relationship. That is a special relationship in operation. And clearly it's for the president to take decisions that he considers in the national interest, the right decisions for the US. I understand that. I respect that. But equally, it's for me as the British Prime Minister to take decisions that I consider to be in the best interest of the United Kingdom. There's nothing controversial about that. The special relationship is operating right here at an important point.
And finally, and I don't know if I missed it, but you remember earlier in the House of Commons on Monday and Wednesday, the Prime Minister kept saying again and again and again he didn't believe there was a legality and he didn't believe that the US had a plan. That was not an argument he made today, which was really, really interesting. And obviously, we're not about to go to war. We're not about to join those airstrikes. But I did think it was very interesting that he, when asked by journalists repeatedly if he wanted to rule out getting involved in future, he couldn't do so.
I think I have an explanation from that, in that from what Tim Shipman was saying, he actually did want to let the Americans use our bases, but there was a cabinet revolt and Ed Miliband, Yvette Cooper and David Lammy refused to go along with it. And that is a pretty serious, I mean, OK, in the end, the Prime Minister is first among equals, but to have those three ministers in particular say, no, we won't put up with this, that put him in a very difficult position.
Yeah, and look, potentially, and look, Downing Street wouldn't sort of take down the intricacies of the reports that we saw today. They basically said, look, we hadn't got a specific request from the US on a Friday when that meeting was deemed to have taken place. However, others are reporting that the US have been in talks with us about potential action 4 weeks beforehand. So obviously it's a matter of a technicality there.
Natasha, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's talk to Sir Malcolm Rifkin, former Foreign Secretary and former Defence Secretary in the government of John Major. So Malcolm, very good evening to you. Who's got it right here? Because there does seem to be now a real dividing line between the opposition and the government. Kemi Badenoch thinks we should go all in. Keir Starmer is being, well, I think the word to use is circumspect.
Well, it's quite difficult to follow exactly what both Starmer and Kemi Badenoch exactly mean, or they all clearly have very different positions. I have a lot of time for Kemi Badenoch. I think she's giving very, very good leadership, and I'm sure what she's doing and saying is something that ought to be very carefully listened to. But we have to realize there's two separate issues here. There was the original decision of the United States and Israel effectively to go to war with Iran, because of either a nuclear program or regime change or various other reasons. I don't understand that other countries were invited to take part in that war. They might have had some advance notice that something was likely to happen, but this was very much an American and Israeli conflict. Now that's that issue. There's no reason for the United Kingdom suddenly to decide to join with the United States and Israel and deploy massive British military might. But there is a separate issue of the attack on, or attempted attack on, British base in Cyprus and other British assets. There I'm entirely on the side of Kemi Badenoch. It is not just good enough to make a protest about that. We have military capability. If we can identify where these attacks are coming from or are likely to come from and can deal with that by military means, yes, we're right to advocate that is exactly what should happen.
You've served in cabinets that have had to make, should we say, similar decisions to this back in the 80s and 90s, particularly when you were Defence Secretary and Foreign Secretary. Was there any situation analogous to what's going on here? And what can you tell us about the discussions that take place between the Prime Minister and senior ministers?
I can respond to that very easily because I was Defence Secretary when John Major was Prime Minister and Douglas Hurd was Foreign Secretary. And this was during the Bosnian War. And the whole issue was whether Britain should become involved in that by sending military forces, which we eventually did do to escort the humanitarian convoys. But some wanted us to actually directly get involved in the war between the Bosnian Serbs, the Bosnian government, and so forth.
Margaret Thatcher being one of them.
Yes, so what John Major used to do very effectively, he would have, first of all, a preliminary discussion with the Foreign Secretary and the Defence Secretary, myself and Douglas Hurd. And if we were able, which we were able, to reach a common view, then he would present the issue to the whole cabinet. And normally, if the Prime Minister and the Defence Secretary and the Foreign Secretary were all speaking with a single voice on a matter of foreign policy or use of armed forces, the rest of the Cabinet would go along with that. Now, I don't know whether that's the way that the Starmer government are working. I don't know whether it's the way the shadow Cabinet are working. But that's how it should be done. Now, you've been saying, I don't know if this is true, but you've been saying that there was a revolt against Starmer's view by Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, and 2 other senior ministers. Well, that shows Starmer's incapability of addressing these issues before you go to full Cabinet. You should always raise them with the ministers most involved, who are the Foreign Secretary and the Minister for the Armed Forces, and then take it on a wider front.
The whole concept of international law has been much debated over the last week, maybe over the last few years. How much of a role do those considerations play in these decisions, in your experience? Well,
the whole problem about the term international law, people very often assume that you have domestic law and you have international law, UK law and international law. The word law should only be applied, in my view, when you have a means of enforcing that law. Now, international law cannot be enforced. It is a code of conduct which governments have agreed over the years for sensible reasons to try to observe common rules in order to minimize the risk of a third world war or wars breaking out at all. So it's a good idea. We should normally try and go along with that. But sometimes international law is so interpreted in a pernickety way that it goes very much against the national interest, not just of the United Kingdom, but of other countries as well. And we have at the moment an Attorney General, Lord Hermer, and we have a Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who are highly intelligent people, but they think as lawyers and not in terms of the political choices they have to make, the real political choices. Edmund Burke, a great British philosopher, once remarked he had no objection to being governed by law, but he did occasionally object to being governed by lawyers.
And you speak as a lawyer.
Well, no, I was one a long time ago, but I managed to escape from that particular part of my history.
Sir Malcolm, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us. That's Sir Malcolm Rifkin there, former Foreign Secretary and Defence Secretary. So we'll come to your calls in a moment. Who's right here, Kemi Badenoch or Keir Starmer? It is 7:90.
This is LBC.
Tesco Insurance are driving down the cost of motoring with 10% off car insurance. Take out a car insurance policy before the 15th of May 2026 and you'll get 10% off with club card prices. We offer a range of cover options, so you can choose the one that's right for you. Save 10% when you buy or renew a car policy with Tesco Insurance. Search Tesco Car Insurance and get a quote direct today. Club card required. Excludes add-ons. T's and C's apply.
At TfL, we're helping make roads safer. We're continuing to roll out lower speed limits because 20 miles per hour roads have already seen 24% fewer collisions causing death or serious injury. We're also improving junctions to help keep you safe and improving visibility for our bus drivers with new wing mirror cameras. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Comparison of collisions data before and after implementation of 20 miles per hour speed limit.
Idle money lies in your current account, picking crumbs out of its belly button, wondering, should I eat them? But when you start investing with Monzo, your money's always busy. It turns on regular investments, invests your spare change, and tops up your stocks and shares ISA. It even helps you make sense of risk and return. Monzo, the bank that gets your money moving. You could get back less than you invest. Monzo current account required. UK residents 18 plus. T's and C's apply.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:20 on LBC. Let's go straight to your calls. Let's go to Mohammed in Woodford. Hello, Mohammed.
Good evening, Ian.
Hi.
Hi. Keir Starmer's right. We shouldn't be following Trump into Netanyahu's war. A war criminal that started the Gulf War first, second, Libya. He's been the source of most troubles in the world. There should have been a regime change, but that should have been in Tel Aviv. Yes, the Iranians aren't, they're not, they weren't good for the world, but they've not been as bad as Netanyahu.
Oh,
Netanyahu
really?
is the worst person in the world. Yes.
Are you familiar with what the Iranian government has done to its own people over the last 40
the Iranian
years?
government had done that. Well, and Netanyahu's a saint.
Well, the Iranian government have killed more than 1 million of its own citizens over the last 40 years. I mean, whatever you think of Netanyahu, he hasn't done that.
He's done probably much worse than that.
What could be worse than that?
Weapons of mass destruction. He's the one that's been coming out for this for 30, 40 years now. He keeps going on about it. He's the one that started the Gulf, the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War. Yes.
What are you talking about?
Look at your history, Iain.
How did he start the first Gulf War? He wasn't even in power.
He wasn't. He was saying that Iran's got these weapons, Iraq's got these weapons. Well, weapons.
Iraq invaded Kuwait. That's what started the Gulf War.
It's basically weapons of mass destruction.
No. Iraq invaded Kuwait. What part of that do you not understand?
Iraq invaded Kuwait.
Yes. And that's why America and countless other nations rallied to Kuwait's defence to repel Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. That's what's happened.
That's what's happened. So what was better for Iraq? The Americans or Saddam Hussein?
What are you talking about?
What am I talking about? I'm trying to make sense, Iain.
Well, you're not.
I am. I'm making much more sense than you've been. All you do is support him. You've been supporting a war criminal all the time.
But Netanyahu wasn't. I'm not even sure he was in the Israeli parliament in 1990.
Netanyahu has been wrong all the time. He's wrong on this.
But how can he have caused the first Gulf War when it was Saddam Hussein who invaded Kuwait that caused it?
Then the Iranians altogether. One of the reasons we have immigration...
No, answer my question, because you've gone off on this Gulf War tangent, and I want you to explain to me how, No, stop talking. Stop talking. Explain to me how, when it was Iraq that invaded Kuwait, that was what started the Gulf War.
Okay, first one, I may be wrong on the first one.
Well, I think, we got there in the end.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Dear, oh dear.
Who started the Second World War? Second Gulf War.
Well, clearly it was the Americans. I'm not going to defend that, but how you can say that was down to Netanyahu, I don't know. Oh, he's gone. If he can't stand the heat, he got out of the kitchen, I suppose. Dear, oh dear. There are some absolute lunatics in this world, aren't they? They come on the radio, they profess to know their history, and I'm going to look up in a minute what Netanyahu was doing in 1990. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu. I think he's been a very bad prime minister in many ways for Israel. But, let's blame him for the things we can actually blame him for. Let's go to Ned, who is in Bradfield in Essex. Hello, Ned.
Hi, Iain. How you doing?
Hi.
All right. So just a quick thing, I've been listening to this all week and I'm trying to pay as much attention as I can. I think the one thing that I've come to is there's something off about the timing of all of this. And in the way that I mean that is that if you're going to move the American fleet, it's going to take you at least 6 months or so to get them equipped and then sail across into the Mediterranean, crewed and trained and what have you for a particular conflict. So I do wonder how this decision to do this thing with Iran by the US and Israel, when it was actually decided, because it would have taken a ton of time. So to mention our HMS Dragon, for example, and most of these boats seem to be up on stilts all the time, being repaired or being rekitted or you've got shore leave or what have you. So there seems to be a bit of a timescale lag here. And I do wonder that we are being asked to jump in last minute without maybe being asked. Does that feel right to you?
I see the point that you're making. I think it is partially true, but we know, because it's been reported, certainly for the last month, that America has been building up its military resources in the Gulf. So I think 2 aircraft carriers moved into the Gulf over the past few weeks. I'm not sure about the 6 months. I don't know enough about military matters to know whether you would need it for that long. We were not consulted on this by the Americans. We were asked, I think, I was reading something in the paper this morning, I think it was around the 17th of February, that Trump asked Keir Starmer for permission to use British bases. And last week, he was denied that. So, look, we've had ample warning that this was coming. So that's where I don't understand why the senior military figures, and indeed the Defence Secretary, didn't think, OK, well, RAF Akrotiri, that's a key British asset. It could come under attack, so we need to send a ship there now. Why has that only just happened? That's what I would ask.
I think, and I would ask the same question, then that's when we get into the legalese, isn't it? Because if you're going to commit a ship out of one port into another to defend something and take away from that, for example, if it's up on bricks or off on its schedule, if you haven't got the permission, say, from Congress or from Parliament or whatever, given the shadow of the Iraq War and the temperamentalness of Trump, you're sort of playing a bit whack-a-mole with some very sort of heavy assets. And I think that's the position that we're in right now, is that we're having to play catch-up. And certainly it's good politics, to say, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. But I think the reality of it is much different.
Well, I mean, the problem is that we're now in the position where our Prime Minister, I think on Monday, said, or was it that address he made on Sunday evening, where he said that after the attack on RAF Akrotiri, which now people are saying, well, actually it wasn't an Iranian drone that landed there. It was nobody seems to know what it was. But I mean, whatever the truth of that, it in a sense is immaterial, because that base has to be defended. But we are in a position now where you have a British Prime Minister who's saying, well, yes, we need to we need to attack at source all the munitions bases so they can't send out drones and ballistic missiles and all the rest of it. But, oh, by the way, we're not going to do that. We're only going to react in a defensive way. We'll leave that to the Americans to do, basically piggybacking on America. Now, I think that is shameful from our government. It undermines us in the international arena. And we know what Jordan thinks about the actions. We know what the Gulf states think about Britain's lack of action. And I think our reputation has been dragged through the mud by this government over the past few days.
We've also got other allies as well. I mean, the Americans do sort of a hell of a lot of weapons to Saudi and to the Middle East as well. So maybe we could all join up together a little bit and get those jets up in the air.
I agree.
While we're busy making plans, I just think.
Well, and also think of the symbolism of the fact that if Saudi Arabia, if the Gulf states, if Jordan joined together with America and Israel. I mean, think of the symbolism of that.
Well, and imagine that. I mean, remember talking about cutting the hair off the snake, and if that is the actual case, and I wouldn't argue that at all. I think it's a terrible regime. I had Iranian friends I grew up with that were disclosed by the Shah, and they were so sad to lose their home and their country and their friends. I would love it for them to go home. It would literally make their lives again, to have that. So I have absolutely no argument about that at all. My only concern here is that, again, I feel we've been high jumped slightly. I think some people are making mischief out of it, and I think, to be slightly cautious at this point, especially how, Donald Trump, he's not the guy, if it was Obama doing it, maybe.
Hang on a second there, Paul. Sorry, Ned, because think back to 2014, where Obama talked about red lines being crossed in Syria, and if chemical weapons were used, well, there would be big consequences to that. And he did absolutely nothing. Encouraged by Ed Miliband, who, strangely enough, is taking exactly the same position here. I mean, Ed Miliband, bizarrely, I think, has had a huge effect on British foreign policy over the past 12 years. And I think it's pretty shameful, his record in it, but I may be alone in thinking that. Ned, thank you very much indeed. Right, we will take more of your calls, lots coming in, and we'll also talk about Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary's new proposals on asylum seekers and immigration, because she made a very important speech today, which has kind of been overshadowed by what's happening in Iran. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 7:30, and here's Matt Hewitt with the LBC News headlines.
Donald Trump says he must be involved in picking Iran's next supreme leader. The US and Israel killed Ali Khamenei in strikes on Saturday. Today's seen a sixth day of strikes on Iran and counterattacks, including the hitting of a US tanker. The UK's announced it'll send 4 more fighter jets to Qatar to help defensive operations in the region. Defence Secretary John Healey's been visiting Cyprus, where Britain's response has been criticised. And the Home Secretary set out plans to remove accommodation from asylum seekers who break the law under proposed migration reforms. Shabana Mahmood says migrants could be paid £40,000 per family to leave the country. LBC weather, patchy rain edging southeast with brighter, fresher conditions following. Lows between -2 and 10 Celsius.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
This is taxation without representation.
Straight to the point.
Do you get giddy with all these U-turns?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Lucky he gets up in the morning, really, isn't it?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
A message from TfL.
I saw Alicia's photo in my newsfeed. All I can think of is her family. How they're getting on. If they're getting on. I didn't look when I pulled out, and she never made it home. Sounds crazy, but it felt like her motorbike came out of nowhere. But I know the truth. I didn't look again.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
How big's the job? Compact and nimble? That's the Vauxhall Combo. A bit of everything? Meet the award-winning Vivaro. Or is it a load-it-all job? That's Movano. Whatever the job, there's a Vauxhall van for it. Right now, during the Vauxhall Pro Days van event, until the 16th of March, you can save £750 off any new Vauxhall van, electric or diesel, on top of all other offers. Search Vauxhall Van Range. Business users only, 18 plus, £750 excluding VAT. T's and C's apply. Search Vauxhall Van Range.
It's hard to concentrate when you're worried about your health. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world. Like you can't be fully present.
Hello, AXA Health. How can I help?
At AXA Health Insurance, we build our teams with people who care. So when you need us, we're here to support you. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. Pre-existing conditions are not covered.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:33 on LBC. Right, we will come back to your calls on Iran in just a moment. But first, families of failed asylum seekers will be offered up to £40,000 to leave the UK under a trial scheme announced by the Home Secretary today, Shabana Mahmood. She said the government would seek to forcibly remove failed asylum seekers if they do not accept incentive payments of up to £10,000 per person, capped at 4 per family. Now, I maybe being naive here, but I would have thought that might be a bit of a drag and sort of incentivise people to come to this country, because I think, well, if we're going to be paid 40 grand to leave, why not? Well, just as the PM did at the Munich Security Conference last month, the Home Secretary took a moment to hit out at the Greens and Reform UK whilst announcing her new asylum system reforms.
Labour values applied to our migration sit at neither extreme. They are no invitation to the fairy tale of open borders, as Zach Polanski's revolutionary Green Party demands, and neither are they the nightmare of Nigel Farage, pulling up the drawbridge and shutting out the world, narrowing our proud patriotism into a crude ethno-nationalism. Between those two extremes, there is ample space for a migration system that is fair, but where it needs to be, firm.
Well, let's talk to Yvonne Sampson, who is Principal Solicitor at Privatus, which specialises in immigration law. Yvonne, very good evening to you. Now, the Home Secretary likes to talk tough on immigration. Was that what she was doing today?
No, I mean, look, there is a fundamental shift in the framework, the principle that those granted refugee status will have an opportunity to apply for permanent settlement called indefinite leave to remain. And what she's done now is a new policy reframes that principle. And under the proposed rules, refugees will instead receive temporary protection, with their cases being reviewed every 13 months to determine whether conditions in their country have changed sufficiently to justify their return. But look, it's not much different to now in that sense that after 5 years refugee status, you don't automatically have a right to indefinite leave to remain. And the government, even now under the old rules, and that's the new rules coming on Monday, can relook at whether there is still a risk of return. And if there isn't, they can send you back. Problems with the system is many countries won't accept refugees back. They won't grant entry clearance for those individuals or travel documents. So for those countries, I'm afraid there's not a lot we can do. On top of that, refugees may have children, they may get married. So when that happens, it's a much stronger case under Article 8 of the Refugee Convention for family and private life. So it's a little bit more complex, not simplistic as the Secretary of State is trying to frame this.
Now, what about these incentives that she's announced? Up to £40,000 to leave the UK for a family of 4. Now, there'll be a lot of taxpayers think, well, I'm sorry. I mean, we had a caller on this morning, I think on Nick Ferrari's programme, who was saying that she was just being made forcibly homeless by her local council. And then she reads that the government is going to pay failed asylum seekers up to £40,000. Now, that, she actually got very upset about it. And you can understand that, can't you?
Well, you can, but there's two ways to look at this. One is that refugees may well want to return to their country if they're getting that sort of payment. £40,000 in Afghanistan, Eritrea, Sudan, Pakistan is a lot of money, where the average wage is probably around about £200 or £300 a month. So you're looking at probably about 15 or 20 years' worth of salary for them. So, but unfortunately, as you quite rightly pointed out, that it may well be an incentive for people to come here and split it with the people smugglers with payments, back-ended payments. So I'm not sure that's going to work. But this is the problem. The government are not addressing the problem. What they're doing is addressing the policies of other parties. And the Home Office is broken. I've worked in the Home Office system for more than 25 years. And progressively, over that time, the situation's worsened. The training, decision-making, removal of failed asylum seekers, identifying someone who's genuine and who's not genuine. So I don't think the system should be changed. If you're a genuine asylum seeker, you should be granted permanent status. That's my view. And there are very few who I would class as true asylum seekers within the spirit of the 51 Convention. It was never designed for people fleeing civil war, for example, or people fleeing from economic hardships. That was not the purpose of the Refugee Convention. The Refugee Convention was if you're being persecuted by your government and you're not getting protection, you should be able to flee to another country and get protection. That was the fundamental principle. It's been expanded through case law, especially through European judgments, and it's something of a different animal now. So I think we need to relook at that Refugee Convention. It should be narrower and focused on genuine refugees.
Final question that's related to this subject, but I was reading the other day that in the last government, on average, 72% of asylum claims were successful. Now, in the same article, which I can't actually remember where it was now, they were saying that has gone down. It's either 42% or 25%, I can't remember which, but whichever one it was, that is quite a dramatic reduction. How do you account for that?
Well, look, I think the success of an asylum application doesn't necessarily mean that it's a genuine asylum seeker. The decision-making of the Home Office is very poor. The country information that they have about the countries from where asylum seekers are coming from is old information. It's not up to date. And the problem is that the assessment of these decisions is very bad. And when the courts look at them, they're applying the case law that came before the courts before, very much in favour of asylum seekers. The courts are certainly not on the side of the Home Office. And you're getting a lot of people are winning appeals on the asylum system doesn't require any evidence. That's another problem. All you need is a story. You don't need any documents. You don't even need a identity document or any documents to prove what you're saying is correct. What you need is a plausible story. And I don't think that's sufficient for people to be granted asylum.
Thank you very much indeed, Ivan. That's Ivan Sampson from Privatus, the solicitors. By the way, I have now found out what Benjamin Netanyahu was doing in 1990 when Iraq invaded Kuwait. He was Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel, so not even a cabinet member. So how Mohammed could blame... Netanyahu can be blamed for a hell of a lot of things. I kind of agree with that. But this one, he is actually innocent of. Right, back to your calls. This is on Iraq. If you've just tuned in, we're talking about whether Keir Starmer's rather circumspect approach to this Iranian attack by America in Israel is the right one, or whether Kemi Badenoch is right when she says we should go all in behind America. Aidan is in St Albans. Hello, Aidan.
Yeah, good evening, Ian. It's Adam, in fact.
Sorry, I do apologise.
Never worry, sir. Great show. The current debacle really shows all roads lead to this reported cabinet revolt. We can, as you've said earlier, brought up the name of Ed Miliband. I feel he's the new Prime Minister in waiting. He himself and Yvette Cooper and David Lammy were the ones that pushed and looked for the veto of the Diego Garcia basically jump point for the American Air Force to kick on from there. This is quite evident to see where they are, and they're not very partial to the Trump administration. This is where something that's gone wrong, and again now Keir has to turn around and to move from this. It is absolutely, we're not in a position to do a lot of help, but we could have verbally given a little bit of support, if not, from tactical points.
Well, yeah, and I think the fact that we haven't done any of that, and we've actually we haven't been quite as antagonistic as Spain has, but we're on the verge of it. I think this is going to damage British-American relations for years to come. I mean, it could even be decades. I think when you look at the history of the so-called special relationship, 2026 will be seen as a key point, just as 1956 was, the Suez Crisis, which Tessa Dunlop and I have been talking about on our Where Politics Meets History podcast. I mean, there are a few parallels to be drawn from that. You'll be able to listen to that from tomorrow morning. But Adam, thank you very much indeed. Matthew is a first-time caller in Barnet. Hello, Matthew.
Hello. So I wanted to really talk about the Iran conflict, as I am someone who lived in Iran most of his life, and I've got a lot of experience to share, and ask people why would on earth we would allow the regime like that to continue, whatever the reason they have in their minds, if it's because they are supporting people of Palestine, which is not really true. It's because what they do is one oppressor can never free another nation. And as they oppress the people of Iran, about 5 million of them oppress 90 million Iranians. They cannot free people of Palestine because they will oppress them as well.
You could argue, Matthew, that far from freeing the people of Palestine, they've kept them under sort of subjugation ever since 2005 by funding Hamas.
That is true, yeah. They are funding Hamas. Ever since I was a kid, they would just say, stop with funding Gaza and Palestine, because if you are killing us in the streets in 2009, 2019, 2022, 2026, there is no way that they want to do any good for the people of Palestine. They just want to have control. It's simple as that. They took over Iran in a day. They hijacked the revolution and they killed everyone. And then less than a year later, the war started with Iraq. And they made it go along for 8 years, and they killed more people, executed more people, get rid of all the opposition until people stayed quiet for 20 years or something. But even then, they would write. And then they started murdering the elite part of the society, the writers, the poets, the artists. And so we have experienced that all our lives, and I'm asking, why would some people on the left would prefer that the people of Iran endure such pain while they are living freely? If they like it, they can go and try and live under the Islamic Republic.
Well, there's a very simple explanation to that, isn't there? It's because Israel is involved. And anything that Israel puts their name to, anything that Trump puts his name to, the left are automatically on the side of the people that they are against. So that is the explanation. It is very simple.
Yeah, I've never seen Israel attacking another country, but for us, experience it from the outside. We see the notifications that the people get, stay away from this area, get shelter, do this, do that. They say everything to the people. They are precise. They are going for what they are after, which is IRGC, and they are not hurting people. The thing is that, yes, it breaks my heart as an Iranian to see some people are the casualties of this war, but we have paid the price with the blood of more than 40,000 people less than 2 months ago. We've been paying the price with the blood of our people. But then, yes, it is outrage to see some people say that stop the killings. Well, how would you feel when Iran becomes the next North Korea? And then there's nothing we can do for the Iranian people unless, even if they get killed by the millions, then no one can lay a hand on the Islamic Republic.
Can I ask you a question? I was saying on the show last night, I don't know if you were listening, that I'm constantly getting Instagram reels from people from Iran or of Iranian extraction telling the world why they shouldn't be listening to all these liberal voices criticising Israel and Trump, because they're fully behind what is happening. Now, that may be something to do with the algorithm that serves my Instagram reels. I don't know. But you must have lots of friends who also come from Iran. Have you met a single one of them or talked to a single person who has either lived in Iran or has got Iranian family that actually thinks that Trump and Israel have got it completely wrong?
As I said, it's about 5%, and even outside the country, it's less than 5%, because we got out of Iran to be able to speak up. There is no access to good jobs for the people who don't believe in the Islamic Republic in Iran. Only the section of the society who are connected to the Islamic Republic in some way, or the IRGC, get to have good jobs, get to import, export, to get to connect to the war, to the free banking. We don't have Visa or MasterCard in Iran. A normal Iranian would have gotten 500 quid a month 10 years ago. They're getting 100 quid now. Yeah. And it's not because of the sanctions alone. The Islamic Republic is making a lot of money. They are selling the oil with 10% discount, hefty discounts to China. They'll get money probably as another form of commodities. And people do not have access to live freely, to work the jobs they want. And you see that in the Iranians who migrated from Iran and who live outside of the country. They are successful people, businessmen, the ones that Trump himself admires.
Well, look, let's hope that situation does change. I don't think it's going to change in the immediate future, but over time, let's hope that one day you, Matthew, can feel free to go back to the country of your homeland if you want to and help rebuild that country, because there will be a lot of rebuilding to do. Thank you very much indeed. I'll tell you who's on Cross Question after this break. It's 7:49.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Families of failed asylum seekers will be paid up to £40,000 to voluntarily leave the UK within 7 days. Alex Norris, who's Minister for Border Security and Asylum.
We're doing a targeted pilot at 150 families that, if is effective in its totality, will lead to a saving of £20 million for the taxpayer.
You honestly don't think people will see this as an extra magnet to try and get to the United Kingdom?
Well, they certainly can't on the pilot, because they won't be in scope for it.
Patrick in Romford.
I'm absolutely livid. My bloody bored in here listening to this.
Mark is in Basildon.
Do you know what? Give me a dinghy. I'll cross the channel for 40 grand.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
When you switch the family's unlimited plans to Vodafone, you save. So while Nan's learning to voice note,
Can you hear this? Is this on?
you're saving. While your daughter's setting a new high score on her favourite game.
Get in!
You're saving while your son's video calling his crush for 3 hours.
I love you more.
You're saving. Save more when you switch your family's plans to Vodafone with Vodafone Together. Eligible plans from the 30th of October. Credit check and terms apply.
On your marks, get set, go hybrid. The new Toyota Aygo Cross Hybrid. More oomph than a Friday feeling. And smoother than your last online date. More confidence, more go. In a new hybrid engine with 0% APR representative over 24 months. The new Toyota Aygo Cross Hybrid. Go on. Visit your local Toyota centre. Price from £21,595. Available on Toyota PCP when financed through Toyota Financial Services by 31st March 2026. Optional final payment indemnities may be required. See website, conditions apply.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group Clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
With over 50 years' experience, Fidelity can help you feel confidently invested. Make the most of your annual allowances by the 5th of April with our expert insights, excellent service, and wealth of investment options. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
It's hard to concentrate when you're worried about your health. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world. Like you can't be fully present. Hello, AXA Health. How can I help? At AXA Health Insurance, we build our teams with people who care. So when you need us, we're here to support you. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. Pre-existing conditions are not covered.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
7:52 on LBC. Now, Cross Question at 8 will feature the following four guests. Lord Tariq Ahmad, who is a former Conservative Middle East minister. Alex Ballinger, Labour MP for Hales Owen, who's a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, former Royal Marine. Elizabeth Braw, foreign policy expert, who's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative. And Yasmin Ahmed, who is UK director of the campaign group Human Rights Watch. So, as you can see, we are going to concentrate on the war in the Middle East. So if you've got any questions that you want to put to our panel, now is the time to ring us. 0345 6060 973. Or you can WhatsApp or text 84850. Right, before that though, I think we've got time for at least a couple of calls. Let's go to Ahmed in Dulwich. Good evening. What would you like to say?
Hi, Ian. Thanks for giving me the time to speak. Actually, there's something missing in the narrative across the board over the past few days regarding Iran. Is the theocracy itself, the religious elites have been ruling the country since 1979, are divided. So they are in unison. I would say Khamenei, who was killed a few days ago, hijacked theocracy, so stubborn to change. So there was an opportunity, not just one opportunity for Ali Khamenei to change the course, but there were multiple opportunities over the past decades to take the country. They were ruling, they were dictating the course, but his stubbornness and also his extremist and radical ideology.
But he was effectively following the lead of the original Ayatollah Khomeini, wasn't he?
Yes, Khomeini was his kind of his mentor.
Yeah. So why would you expect him to plough a different furrow?
No, I mean I was not expecting him to change, but if you are in politics, you should be pragmatic. If you are holding a certain ideology, when it comes to politics and when it comes to the geopolitics, if you stick to your ideology without being able to change for the sake of the country.
But do theocrats really think in those terms? I think we do, and obviously, I mean, we have the difference between what we call conviction politicians and pragmatists. Well, I think if you're in a theocracy, you don't have the opportunity to differentiate between that, because you've got the theocrats and then you've got the actual government. And the government in Iran, I think, has effectively ruled in fear of the theocrats. So you might have one or two people in the government who are a bit more reform-minded, but, I mean, not really in the way that we would use that reform. They are still sort of wedded to the theocracy, because they know that if they deviate from it in any meaningful way, well, they won't be much longer in power. I think that's what's happened here. Ahmed, thank you very much indeed. Sorry about that. There seemed to be a delay on the line there somehow, so apologies for anybody who's disturbed by that. Let's go to Joseph in Swindon. Hi, Joseph.
Hi, Ian. Evening, Ian. Ian, you since bent on for Keir Starmer to take us into a conflict that we cannot afford. We don't have the military assets to take part in it, and we don't have the money to spend on a war that we shouldn't. In the first case, when the negotiations was going on within peace treaty, Donald Trump never invited us. He never invited Europeans. He never wanted us saying it. He decided to then have a war on the Iranian. My heart goes out to the Iranian people. I'm Grenadian, so Grenada had an invasion by the United States as well.
And the United States didn't inform us of that either.
In 1983, they did the same thing. And now I look back in the Grenadian invasion, if you look back on history now, you'll find all what Ronald Reagan did then, it was promised and a lie as well, the invasion of Grenada. He have done the same thing in Central America. And now you have the same thing happening.
Well, I mean, Joseph, you are from Grenada, so I'm sort of slightly hesitant to correct you for want of a better term.
The whole thing was formed on a lie. The whole thing was just formed on a lie to just have their own way in the Caribbean. They do the same thing in Venezuela recently, and they're now doing the same thing in Iran. And Keir Starmer is making the right decision in the best interest of the British people. After the Iraq War, British people overseas was more of a threat. We feel more of a threat carrying a British passport, traveling overseas, than before the Iraq War.
Really? I've never felt under threat from anyone.
Well, after the Iraq War, we never had terrorism attack on our soil, and after the Iraq War, we had it.
Well, again, that's simply not true.
Oh, okay. Then,
there were plenty of terror attacks that happened. I admit that the Iraq War certainly didn't prevent them.
Not from the Middle East. We're talking about the IRA and stuff like that. But we're talking about conflict we was involved in. But after that conflict, we became less secure on our street. And by fighting that war, Barack Obama came in and decided to have a negotiation. We're going to ease sanction. We're going to reward you as you reward. Respect other nations.
That worked out well.
No, but other nations, Ian, every household cannot have the same point of view of how life is going to be. And I think sometimes the Western world got us kind of have a little bit of respect for other nations and what they want.
Well, I totally agree. But the fact is that Barack Obama, I think you can trace a lot of the roots of the current conflict back to his appeasement of Iran. But unfortunately, that's the end of the hour, Joseph. Otherwise, I'd debate that with you for a bit longer. But thank you very much indeed for your call. Now, we are going to go to Cross Question. It's Thursday evening. It's 8 o'clock. So we have Cross Question with Lord Tariq Ahmad, former Conservative Middle East Minister, also United Nations Minister, and also former Counter-Terrorism Minister. Alex Ballinger is Labour MP for Hales-Owen, who's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of MPs, and also a Royal Marines veteran. And Elizabeth Braw, foreign policy expert, who's a senior fellow of the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative. They're going to be here to take your calls, ostensibly on what's happening in the Middle East. Phone now 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Defence Secretary's rejected suggestions the UK's been slow in its response to attacks on British bases in the Mediterranean. John Healey's told LBC Britain's been stepping up air defences in Cyprus for weeks. He also insists the UK's relationship with the US remains strong, despite attacks on the Prime Minister by Donald Trump.
The special depth of particularly the military and security relationship between the UK and the US goes back decades. It's deep, it's strong. We do things together that no other nations do. It has survived the ups and downs of politics on both sides of the Atlantic over the years.
Well, meanwhile, the Prime Minister says 4 more British Typhoon jets will be sent to Qatar as he defended not joining in with the initial strikes on Iran. Sir Keir Starmer initially refused the US permission to use British military bases for raids. Traffic is streaming out of Beirut's southern suburbs this evening. Residents are fleeing the Lebanese capital after a large-scale evacuation warning by Israel, which is fighting Hezbollah militants. And it's understood Labour MP Joni Reid has been suspended from the party while an internal investigation takes place. It's after her husband was arrested on suspicion of spying for China. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 162 points at 10,405. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.14. LBC weather: showers, some wintry in the north and west tonight, clear elsewhere, lows of -2. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply doesn't work that way. Even a quick look at the message, or firing off a quick reply, affects your concentration and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, very good evening and welcome to Thursday's Cross Question with me, Iain Dale. Coming up, we have a panel which I think you're going to really like because they kind of know their stuff on the Middle East. We are joined on my right by Lord Tariq Ahmad, who is former Conservative Middle East Minister, also former United Nations Minister and a former Counter-Extremism Minister. So you cover a lot of ground there, Tariq. Welcome. To my left, Elizabeth Braw, regular on the programme, foreign policy expert, who's a senior fellow of the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative. And to her left, Alex Ballinger, Labour MP for Halesowen. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee and also a Royal Marines veteran. So we'd all better behave, otherwise. He's trained to kill, you know. Are you trained to kill?
I'd let you off, Ian.
Thank you very much. Right, the number to call if you'd like to ask a question to our panel on any aspect of what's going on in the Middle East, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number. You can text 84850. And of course, you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC YouTube channel and the LBC app.
0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
Well, let's go to our first caller. It's Paul in Worcester Park. Hello, Paul.
Yeah, hi there. My question is, having listened and been very annoyed by Keir Starmer waffling on about international law and hiding behind it, so I think, I've always thought that international law has always been a fantasy and toothless and has never, ever worked. It's worked with those countries who happen to want to obey the law, but on those who don't, it never has and it never will. And I wonder what the panel really do think about international law and how effective it has ever or ever can really be.
It's a great question. I talked about this to Sir Malcolm Rifkind earlier, the former Foreign Secretary, and he described international law more as a code of conduct because laws have to be enforced and there is no enforcement method here. Alex Ballinger, let's come to you first. This has been a big subject of the debate ever since the attacks on Iran started by America and Israel. A lot of armchair international lawyers, it has to be said, on social media. What's your view? How do you answer Paul's question?
Well, I'm also an armchair international lawyer, not being a lawyer myself. But I do think that international law helps protect smaller and medium-sized states like the UK, because without that protection, without the rules, without the framework, the bigger, more powerful countries can do whatever they want. And that's what we saw in the First and Second World Wars. And we're kind of coming back to that system at the moment, with Russia invading Ukraine without too many consequences, and with America now conducting with the Israelis this operation in Iran. And I think the big challenge and the lack of consequence is because we have America, we have Russia, we have the Chinese as the permanent five countries on the UN Security Council. And when they're breaking the rules, it makes it very hard for the rest of us to need to follow them.
But it is true that, I mean, should we change the expression international law? Because, as Malcolm Rifkin said, it can't be actually enforced, can it? So how can you call it a law?
Well, it can be enforced if international actors, if the most powerful countries want to enforce it. I think the challenge at the moment is when you have people like Donald Trump who are ignoring the rules, it becomes very difficult to enforce them. And that, I think, is actually damaging for America as well as everybody else in the world, because the kind of respect and the soft power the Americans used to have by following the rules, creating a framework that was beneficial to countries everywhere, not just on war, by the way, also on international trade. And we can see the Americans are ripping up the rule book and the World Trade Organization on what they're doing on tariffs. It makes other countries look for support in other places, look again at the actions that they might need to do to protect themselves. And it makes countries like the UK and Europe and others be in a much weaker position than we would be otherwise.
Elizabeth.
Yes, international law exists and it may not be enforceable. Well, it would be enforceable if countries would step up and enforce it when other countries violate it. But I think the thing to remember is it's better to have it than not to have it. Without it, we would have anarchy, right? There would be no hope for smaller countries or even for medium-sized countries. And at least with international law in place, we have a rule book and we can refer to it, even though some large countries may decide that they are more powerful than that rule book. But at the end of the day, they depend on some some degree of order in the world, not just their governments, but their businesses too, which these days operate internationally. So it's a fallacy for large countries to think that they don't need international law. And they'll discover it. They just haven't discovered it yet.
So you think Donald Trump will, at some stage, discover it?
He may not discover it, but America will discover it soon enough.
OK. Tarek.
Well, I mean, just that final point, I remember at A-level studying the age of discovery, and that's what brought about the discovery of America. So we should never give up on hope. But there is this context, the international rules-based system, and what Malcolm said to you as well about a code of conduct. I think he's right on that. But the international sort of rules and the international laws do apply. I mean, one of the implementing bodies is, of course, the UN Security Council. It's a construct of the Second World War. There were international rules and conventions set up, such as the Geneva Conventions, to ensure that when there was conflict, that there would be rules which would govern humanitarian access, human rights being protected, the proportionality principles when it came to conflict. Unfortunately, recent conflicts in recent years have demonstrated that the big players, Ukraine being a very good example, and we live by that. I was part of the government when we saw those tanks roll across the border in Ukraine. They've been flouted. And I think the United Kingdom, when it came to that body that does implement, we did rather well. We haven't used the so-called veto as one of the permanent five for over 35 years.
Is that right?
Yeah, we've never exercised it for a long, certainly in my time we didn't. So it goes back several decades. But the fact is it was there as an exception, not a norm. Unfortunately, China, United States and Russia, of course, exercised it quite liberally. And in that context, we have seen the breakdown. It's not non-existent. It's just been a breakdown of international law. It's used when convenient, but not applied universally. But I would slightly differ, Alex, and to say it should apply to medium-sized states, small states, but also to large states, because large states, those who have power, those who have the military prowess, but also large-scale democracies, we have a duty to actually protect the principles of international law and ensure they're upheld.
Right, let's move on to another question. It's a text question from Polly in Amt Hill in Bedfordshire. 4 jets? Surely our Prime Minister cannot be serious. Either get stuck into this war or go full Switzerland and stay out completely. I don't want us involved, but I'd respect our government a lot more if they made a decision, Iain. What does your panel think? Elizabeth.
Well, the first thing to remember is that the UK is between a rock and a hard place on this issue, on this war, because it's an ally of the United States. The United States expects the UK to step up, even though there appears to have been no consultation before the war, so the UK didn't get a chance to say that it wouldn't want the US to use Diego Garcia, for example. It wouldn't want...
It did have a bit of notice on that, didn't it?
It did, but it didn't have the chance to say that it was a bad idea. It seems to be the case. Well, I wasn't part of the talks at the time, but consultations involve back and forth between the two parties rather than just a piece of information being given to the other side. So given that the UK didn't have much involvement in the planning of this war, it's a little bit difficult to support it now. But if the UK doesn't support it, then Donald Trump will be upset, and he's already upset. Was
it worth upsetting him?
Yes, it was, because the UK is an independent country, in fact, a powerful independent country that gets to formulate its own foreign policy and security policy and adhere to its objectives and international law, as Lord Ahmad just said. And I think we'll see this more and more, Iain, that something will come out of Washington and European allies will be asked to support it after it has been decided in Washington, and rage will ensue in Washington if they don't support it.
But surely we are in the worst of all possible positions now, where we haven't supported it, but not to the extent that Spain hasn't supported it. The government changed its mind on Sunday evening and said, well, the American planes can leave our bases if it's for defensive means, whatever that means. We've got the Gulf states apparently all thinking that Britain has betrayed them. You have Cyprus complaining that they're having to resort to use Greek warships rather than British warships to protect them. And, I mean, we could not be in a worse position, in my view.
We could not, but I don't think that is because Britain is standing up for itself. It's because the communication wasn't ideal. It wasn't very clear, was it? Whereas Spain's communication was very clear. This is where Spain stands. And by the way, other countries were similarly clear, including Denmark. So the communication could have been better. But I think we all sort of rooted a bit for Keir Starmer when he stood up and said, this is what I stand for, this is what the UK stands for. Because this is what you have to do when major powers behave in a way that is not what the UK stands for, not what Europe stands for.
I think Keir Starmer has been very clear. Now, of course, we don't recognise the lawful basis for this war, for the reason it started in the first place. And I also think that we don't recognise a solid plan from the Americans. So Keir Starmer was absolutely right not to get us involved in the initial strikes. What changed on Sunday and over the weekend is Iran's lashing out against the 10 countries in the Gulf, including countries that held UK bases, including that attack on Akrotiri in Cyprus. And at that point, not only were we conducting defensive operations with the assets that we had there already, and there were assets that were deployed to the region from January when we got an indication from the Americans that they might be doing something. We've also now allowed the Americans to strike the targets that are attacking us from our bases. Now,
how courageous is that, Alex? When, I mean, that's just piggybacking on the back of the Americans. Surely if you have the courage of your convictions, you think, OK, well, if they're attacking us, if the Iranians are attacking us, then we will use our military means to destroy the missile sites or munitions factories or whatever it is that are being used to attack us. We don't just leave it to the Americans. Surely that's a diminution of your duties.
I think it's important that we don't get ourselves more embroiled in this war than we need to. It is a dangerous operation, even flying air missions over a place like Iran. You might remember the first Gulf War, British troops that were shot down, captured and tortured by the regime. This isn't our war. We didn't want to get involved, I'm sure. Elizabeth was saying she doesn't know. I'm sure we would have advised against it. I'm sure in our contact with the Americans, we would have said, this isn't the right thing to do. We should be negotiating and de-escalating. In that context, it's important that we focus on defending ourselves and we let the Americans do the heavy lifting and the Israelis do the heavy lifting for the situation that they've created.
I'm hesitant to say to an ex-Royal Marine how courageous, but I mean, that is genuinely what I feel about. I think it's actually shameful for our country that our government isn't standing up, as we always have done in the past, and said, right, this is now partly our responsibility. I mean, even if you accept the premise that we shouldn't have done it we shouldn't have gone in the first place.
But why is it the UK's responsibility? This is not a war in which the UK was involved in the planning. So you present the UK with the war and say this is now your responsibility.
Well, British interests are under attack, are they not?
Yes, but then that's for the UK to decide how to position itself.
Exactly.
It's not for the UK to then come and help the United States in the execution.
No, but surely it's up to the United Kingdom to protect its own interests, particularly if either British citizens or British interests have come under attack. That is up to Britain to deploy its weapons. Otherwise, what are they there for?
It's important that we focus on our national interest, Ian, and we focus on securing the most number of British citizens and British troops are in the region. Now, we've already got lots of air defences out there. We already had in the region Typhoon aircraft who've been active over Qatar, and we redeployed F-35s, further radars in the months coming up. We've actually got quite a good pattern of air defences around UK bases. And now in the last couple of days, we've sent a further 4 Typhoons. We're sending 2 Wildcat helicopters and HMS Dragon, the air defence destroyer. So the government,
which won't get there for 10 days.
Well, I mean, the reason that our
that was
Navy is in that
predictable
situation is because it's been decades of underfunding.
Well, I agree with that. I think since about 1979, defence have been
in 2010, under the Labour government, we were spending 2.5% of GDP on defence. We didn't spend that at any point under the Conservatives, and we're going to exceed that again next year under the Labour government, which has increased our defence spending.
Okay, Tarek.
Yeah. First of all, I don't think, when you're in a national crisis, it's when you come together. So, I mean, we shouldn't get into a spat of who spent what where. I think we're all accountable and responsible. But in answer to the question, should we have assets in the field now? Absolutely. Should we have known about it and planned in advance? Well, you think about the Armada and when it was steaming towards that particular part of the world. You didn't need a phone call to let you know that this was going to happen. It was on the cards. We've known about Iran's malign influences. We've been talking about protecting our national interests. Well, the Iranians, both from cyber perspectives, interests here in the United Kingdom for a long time, have been targeting British interests on British soil. The whole debate we've been having, raging around the IRGC as a key component of the Iranian government. That all said, I just take one step back. I remember when the Iranians launched attack during the war, the Israeli and Iranian conflict during our time in government, in not too distant past, we had communication lines open with the United States well in advance. I mean, at that time, we were also the conduit to the Iranians, and we were talking to the Iranians before that attack happened. Diplomacy is all about sometimes discreet conversations, but more than anything else, one thing I learned both in business and in diplomacy was about relationships, the ability to pick up a phone, not go through officials and briefings, and to be able to talk. Something went wrong prior to the announcement made over the weekend. I worked with the administration of President Trump in the first round. We had Mike Pompeo was the Secretary of State. We had a really good relationship. That didn't mean we didn't disagree. We did. But when you're working with friends and partners, those disagreements, in my view, should be settled. And we tried to settle it, and we did in the main. The other point, just on defending our interests, a lot of people haven't focused on this, but I was party to this. We have standing agreements. We have a base in Bahrain. We have military assets, as has already been said by Alex, in Qatar. We actually have what's called the CCPA. It's a strategic and security partnership with the Bahrainis, signed with the Americans, which means that if Bahrain was attacked, we would stand up for our Gulf allies as well. So I think that's where the confusion, we shouldn't just talk about the United States and how upset President Trump is. A lot of our partners and friends in the Gulf are saying, hello guys, what's happened here? What was the point of signing this piece of paper if you weren't going to step up?
OK, we'll take more of your questions in just a moment. It's been a spicy start to the programme. 8:20 on LBC.
This is LBC.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, barrel leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
Wrong tool for the job? Don't make that mistake with your van. Get up to 30% off selected new Toyota vans and pickups with a warranty up to 10 years or 100,000 miles with every qualifying routine service. Visit your nearest Toyota centre or visit toyota.co.uk/van savings for more details. Savings on selected vans and pickups ordered by the 31st of March 2026. UK residents. See toyota.co.uk for full details. T's and C's apply.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Any tips for the game? If it's games you want, your best bet is to check out Bet Victor's Casino games. They've got more games than you've had hot dinners. In fact, they've got more games than Las Vegas Gaming Convention's annual convention of games. Lots of games. Got it. Yep, there's over 4,000 slot games, including all your favourites like Big Bass Bonanza, live casino tables like roulette and blackjack, and casino games like Crazy Time. Listen to Harry and make your best bet on Bet Victor Casino. 18+, gambleaware.org.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
8:22 on LBC. On our panel tonight, we have Lord Tariq Ahmad, who is former Conservative Middle East Minister, was also responsible for the United Nations and counter-extremism. Alex Ballinger is Labour MP for Hales Owen, who is a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee and a former Royal Marine. And Elizabeth Braw is a foreign policy expert who's a senior fellow of the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative. The Atlantic Council, we talked to a lot of representatives from the Atlantic Council on LBC. I guess it does what it says on the tin.
It does. It's a very large think tank that does everything from energy security to resilience to the Middle East. And yes, and I'm one of those people.
You are, indeed. I'm grateful to have you here. Right, let's take a text question from Darren in Newcastle. Do Netanyahu and Trump have different objectives on Iran? It seems to me that Trump wants to disrupt and then do a deal with a new leader to get the oil flowing, even if that's to the detriment of the Iranian people, while Netanyahu wants to destroy Iran militarily and economically. Interesting, nothing in the question about regime change there. So, do they have divergent narratives here, divergent priorities? Tariq?
I think they do. First of all, I don't think there's any declared end game in how is this going to end. As was said famously in the House of Commons only the other day by the father of the House, you don't have regime change through resorting to an air campaign. But we've also got to learn from the lessons of history with interventions, be it in Afghanistan, in Libya, and indeed in Iraq, about even by having boots on the ground doesn't necessarily get you the regime change. But parking that question, I do think they have differing objectives. When you look at Bibi Netanyahu, he's used to having states who are crumbling and in a state of disarray around the state of Israel. You can point to Lebanon, you can point to Syria, and indeed further afield to Iraq as well, and with the whole situation with the Palestinians. So I think this situation with Iran is something that is not going to be new for them, but they did see, and the Israelis and Netanyahu specifically, Mr. Netanyahu saw Iran as his one threat. If you go back before even the war on Gaza, there were two central objectives that the Israeli government had. One was about normalization with Saudi Arabia, and the other was to take out the capabilities of Iran's capability to attack, even through ballistic missiles. And we may have this whole discussion on the JCPOA, the deal that was. But the fact was there were missiles which were not part of that deal, which Iran hadn't used until quite recently. So I think the question remains is, do they have differing objectives? Yes. I think President Trump doesn't want to see a elongated war on the ground. But what he and the American administration are yet to provide is what is the end game. And former generals within the US military also are suggesting that. And you talk to any military professional, we've got one here, if you're going in without knowing what the exit strategy is, I think recent history has shown how tragically that can end.
Alex?
I think it is very concerning that the Americans have highlighted 3 or 4 different aims at different times, and they've changed from day to day. Everything from regime change to bringing democracy to allowing people to rise up from the streets to avenging the crackdown a couple of weeks ago.
Or as Marco Rubio said, well, Israel was going to do it anyway, so we thought we'd tag along. I mean, what a crass thing to say.
It's staggering. And are you surprised that under those conditions the UK chose not to get involved in the first place? I think the Americans have been following the Israelis' lead. It seems to be on this. It looks like Netanyahu has wanted to strike Iran for a long time. And he's clearly made a good case to Donald Trump and his team for them to follow, or bounce them into it by launching the attacks at the point that he did. It seems to me, and we've been looking at the Middle East through the Foreign Affairs Committee, that there's a bit of Israeli politics involved in this. It is useful in an election year for Netanyahu to be demonstrating some success against Iran. Of course, Iran has been a menace in the region, has attacked Israel, and has been targeting Jews around the world. That's undoubted. But it does seem that Israel's priorities are not necessarily that positive regime change that some people have been talking about. They're much more interested in degrading the capabilities of Iran and doing that in a way that can show some success to Netanyahu in what is going to be an election year.
Elizabeth?
I have to say it's tragic, having heard what Trump said initially in his social media announcement of this war, when he called on Iranians to rise up, and this is your time, and he called on officials armed officials to lay down their weapons.
That's not quite right, is it? He called on them to stay at home and then at an appropriate time to rise up.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, there is a bit of logic to that, but to actually say it in those terms, when, I mean, if he was trying to deny it was all about regime change, that didn't help.
No, it didn't. And imagine if Iranians had taken him seriously and risen up. I mean, they may yet rise up, and then it may turn out that it was not about installing democracy at all. It was just about unseating Khamenei, or it was about disabling or eliminating certain weapons, i.e. nuclear capabilities Iran has. But if you call on people to rise up and install democracy, and then you walk away from it, lives will be lost. And America standing in the world will suffer if you essentially put yourself out there as a protector of democracy, or the force that will help people install democracy in their country, and then you walk away from it.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here, because I think one mistake people make is to just look at Iraq and look at Libya and think, well, we're inevitably going to repeat the mistakes of the past. Now, you can learn from the mistakes of the past, but it's not inevitable that would happen. And I think Trump's position, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think Trump's position is to say, well, OK, we're going to create the conditions where if the Iranians rise up, then it's up to them what they put in place afterwards. It may not be a democracy. It may still be some sort of vaguely authoritarian regime, but it's got to be better than what there is at the moment. And every Iranian you speak to is quite behind Trump on this.
I'm just reading at the moment yet another book about Iraq, and the same thing happened there. The Americans went in, they installed this retired General Jay Garner to essentially administer the aftermath and set up a new Iraqi government, but there was immediate disagreement about who should be leading that government. Should it be exiles coming who had spent decades in exile because Iraq was an authoritarian country, and who exactly should lead that government, and should they be chosen by the Americans or by other Iraqis? And if you don't have a plan, you will run into.
Sorry, can I come to Tarek here, because I think I was slightly alarmed. Was it yesterday when it was announced that Trump was talking to the Trump administration was talking to the Iranian Kurds and thinking about funding them militarily. Yeah. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, isn't this what happened in Syria, where you had all these different groups and eventually ending up fighting each other? And that is a recipe for civil war.
Of course. If you hold up a map of Iran, the ethnicities that make up Iran are profound. They're bigger than many countries. You can talk of the Azeris, the Baluchis, it goes on and on. And of course, they will have their own different interests. And I think this whole thing, it sounds great as a slogan, regime change, and we won't. I mean, today President Trump was saying, well, if Mujtaba al-Khamenei gets, I'm not happy with him, what's that signal that said? This wasn't new. The Iranians already has a succession for the election and choice of the spiritual leader. I think people, just as kind of side note here, people forget actually that Ayatollah Khamenei was also regarded, not by all, but many different members of the Shia community, not just in Iran, but elsewhere as well, as the spiritual leader of that particular community. There are others as well, but he was regarded from that sense, in a spiritual sense. So the line of succession and how that's done through this electoral college had already been set up already. This was a man in his mid-80s, and so that succession issue was already being talked about. And just parking that thought, though, if there was this ability, I don't think it would happen. You cannot have, as we've just heard, that you can't sort of call to people to come out at the right time, as you were saying, because what will prevail, and we've got a man who's from the army on our panel today as well. We work together at the Foreign Office, but that's for another story, maybe another program. But what will prevail? The IRGC, 180,000 of them still prevail. The then extended army still prevail. So this kind of arming the Kurds, etc., would lead, in my view, to the fragmentation we've seen. Anyone who's been to Iraq, I travelled to Iraq several times after the conflict, whether you went to the independent Kurdish region or you went to other parts of Iraq, the issue of stability and security had not been addressed. If you skim the surface, the issue of Daesh that emerged after the war was still there. You do not kill the ideologies. And I fear that unless there is a plan, and I come back to that earlier point, and I think we can all agree on that, if you go in, if we were going on a holiday, let's make it slightly lighter here, and we didn't have an objective of what we were going to do in a holiday. I've got 3 kids. My wife, we all turn up there and we're pulling in different directions. We're not going to actually get much out.
I love holidays like that.
No, I'm a bit more structured in that thinking.
But then I don't have kids.
But there we are. But I coming back on this, I think if you're going in, you're making this intervention. We haven't even got onto the economic cost of what this war is already costing. I was reading some figures yesterday that already for the Americans alone, this cost is about £770 million. So it's just shy of $1 billion. Sorry, dollars, not pounds already. So, but I do not think that regime change, it sounds nice, but it does not succeed. And you said about learning from history. Taliban. 20 years ago, NATO intervened. We went full circle and replaced the Taliban with the Taliban. And I think it's a tragic reflection on when we see the suppression of rights, human rights, girls' rights in Afghanistan, that Western interventions did not lead to the kind of change we wanted to see.
Right, we'll move on to another question in just a few moments' time. It's 8:33, news headlines on LBC with Matt Hewitt.
The Defence Secretary has refused to rule out the UK taking offensive military action in the conflict in the Middle East. John Healy's in Cyprus, where a warship is due to be deployed after attacks on RAF Akrotiri. 4 more fighter jets will also join those already based in Qatar. The first government charter flight bringing British people back from Oman is on its way to the UK. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump's reportedly said Sir Keir Starmer should be allowing America the use of UK bases without question or hesitation. And Labour MP Joni Reid's voluntarily suspended herself from the party after her husband was arrested on suspicion of spying for China. In a statement, the MP for East Kilbride and Straven says it's whilst an internal investigation takes place. LBC weather, showers, some wintry in the north and west tonight, clear elsewhere, lows of -2.
LBC.
With over 50 years' experience, at Fidelity, we believe there's a difference between investing and being invested. Investing is having access to guidance, tools and expert insights. Being invested means feeling confident about your future. Investing is choosing from a wealth of investment options. Being invested means focusing on your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions or advice, be truly invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
And now your travel news. It's starting to look a bit congested on the A4872 southbound. We're hearing reports people are slowing down to look at the Volkswagen Transporter sales event. Apparently you can get £1,500 off any new Transporter. That's any variant, any trim, and any colour until the 31st of March. Now that's a deal worth queuing for. Search VW Transporter offers. UK retail customers 18 plus. Discount applies to price of all new Transporters ordered by 31st of March and delivered by 30th of June.
It took me less than 30 seconds to request my repeat prescription on the NHS app.
That's quicker than making this brew.
And I saved time by not ringing the GP practice.
Win.
Plus, with notifications turned on, I know as soon as I get a new message.
Big win.
So there's more time for this tea break.
So did you go to that restaurant? We're delivering an NHS fit for the future. Request repeat prescriptions and turn on notifications to never miss a message. Tap the NHS app.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:36 on LBC. On our panel tonight, we have Elizabeth Braw, foreign policy expert, a senior fellow of the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative. Alex Ballinger is Labour MP for Halesowen on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. How's that being effectively ruled by Emily Thornberry?
Dame Emily Thornberry.
I do apologise.
Is a fantastic chair, huge experience and really good fun. So
not someone you want to get on the wrong side of, though.
Also not someone you want to get on the wrong side of.
Wouldn't happen, would it?
No, we're aligned on many things.
And Lord Tariq Ahmed is with us, former Conservative Middle East Minister. What interaction did you have with the Iranian government yourself?
Well, a lot of the time we were the people on the ground. Our embassy stayed open. So when the Americans pulled out, we continued to act as that key interlocutor. There's this whole thing I mentioned earlier in the programme about the previous agreement that had been signed to, there were people like Cathy Ashton, Philip Hammond, who helped to negotiate that agreement. That didn't cover ballistic missiles, but it kept in check, one hoped, the Iranian nuclear programme. So there were discussions we had on international fora, whether it was at the UN or other international meetings. Ironically, when prior to the fall of the regime or the government in Afghanistan, prior to the Taliban coming in, I think my last meeting with the then Iranian foreign minister, who died in the helicopter crash, was in one of those kind of informal dinners where you sit together, and it was perfectly cordial and nice exchange. We had a few pointed exchanges about the differences of UK policy. But diplomacy is all about, you don't make peace with friends. Well, maybe we'll need to in recent events as they've unfurled. But you normally make peace with your foes. And so it was important. And Britain acted as an important, as I said, gateway and conduit to the Iranians at a time when the Americans had pulled back.
OK, right, let's go to another call. It's from Steve in Chelmsford. Hi, Steve.
Oh, good evening to you. Right, so my question is, will Trump's attack on Iran embolden China to invade Taiwan sooner rather than later now?
Very interesting you ask that, because Tessa Dunlop and I do this podcast called Where Politics Meets History, and she brings the history bit, I bring the politics, but we spent quite a time today on our episode, which is out tomorrow, discussing Suez, 1956. And of course, the Soviets invaded Hungary at the same time. Now, whether it was motivated by the fact that, well, everyone's looking at Suez, so they won't take much notice of us doing this, I don't know. But there might be a parallel to be drawn here, Alex.
I'm not sure if there is a parallel. Certainly, we were talking about international law and large states not following international law. I guess another example of that might give a precedent for China to consider actions in Taiwan. But what we're also seeing, and we can talk about the legality of the war or otherwise, is another example of overwhelming American firepower. They have been very successful at defeating the Iranians with, in a very short time, twice the speed they tell us as they did in Iraq in 2003. So I think if I was the Chinese watching this at the moment, I would be thinking, actually, we need to look at our defensive capabilities a bit more. Those American armed Taiwanese troops on the other side of the channel, they're actually going to be pretty difficult foes to fight.
I beg to differ with you, Alex. everyone is focused on the Middle East at the moment. And on top of that, the Americans are using up not just their attention, but their military resources on Iran, so much, in fact, that they are having to now go to the Ukrainians to buy drones from them. What an irony! And actually, it puts Ukraine in a bit of a surprisingly advantageous position. But that gives China opportunity to maneuver. I don't think they will seize the opportunity at this moment. But what they can.
But what would be a better moment?
You never know what wars may yet be started, Iain. But I think around 2027, that's the anniversary, the 100-year anniversary of China. That seems like a nicely symbolic moment, but we are now in 2026. So you may be right. This could be the best moment. But what I'm sure they will do is to continue to weaken Taiwan, and that's something they've been doing for years. In an accelerating fashion or in a growing fashion. And they can do so because nobody is watching a lot at the moment. And another important thing to remember is that while we are watching Iran, Ukraine struggles. Now, it has that advantage of being able to sell drones to the Americans and sort of get out of that supplicant position. But nevertheless, because the Americans are focused on Iran, they are not focused on Ukraine. That gives the Russians an advantage.
Okay, Tarek.
I think if I was in Taiwan and the Taiwanese authorities, I'd be worried right now. There's only one army that could possibly act as a check and balance to the United States military might, and that's China. But I think they're holding their counsel. They're at the moment of the big powers, probably somewhat ironically, keeping their powder dry. Russia can't stand up, as President Putin seemed to do recently and talk about flouting of international law. At the moment, this uneasy truce around the Taiwan Straits is holding. I think the fact that many countries, including ourselves, don't recognize Taiwan as an independent state, we recognize its autonomy, so we don't challenge that whole issue of sovereignty. So I think it's a slightly different play there in terms of Taiwan. But I think if in Taiwan, I'm sure there's many people who are worried, not just because of what's happened in terms of the way it's been set up with Russia and what's happening with Iran, but also that everyone's distracted. And when everyone's distracted, that's a short time to actually, as you said, there's an opportunity there. Will they not? I think from my perspective, dealing with in the way that we did and met with the Chinese on certain things, they're probably looking at things and looking at rising above it all and being a kind of bridge at the moment to help end conflicts. If you look around the world, there's probably about 100 conflicts and wars which are taking place. We certainly don't need another one.
Right, let's do quick answers on this one, if we can, from Martin in Portsmouth. Is Keir Starmer right that regime change from the skies never works? Any precedent for it working? I'm trying to think. Could you say some Balkans, Alex?
I mean, my slightly before my time, the Balkans, but we were. I'm not sure if we changed the regime in Serbia. My history is not so clear. We did stop them from their attacks on Bosnia and later in Kosovo. But of course, a European country that has all sorts of reasons to get involved is quite different to the situation in the Middle East. Very quickly, we talked about potential regime change. I think Gulf War I is a better comparison with where we are at the moment. So we defeated Saddam Hussein's army after he invaded Kuwait. We bombed the hell out of them, and then we encouraged, by we I mostly mean the Americans, the Kurds and the Shias to rise up against him. And what happened there, the Iraqi army brutally cracked down on them, and there were massacres across the place, and Saddam was in power for another 10 years. I think when you leave the situation at a point where you've seriously damaged a regime, but you don't put in place an opportunity for an alternative, that's probably the more likely answer.
Tarek?
I agree with Keir.
Wow.
Well, there you go.
Wasn't expecting that.
That should be the headline of this, but I think on this,
Elizabeth.
Right.
I'll just say one thing first, which is I got my years wrong. the 100 years from 1947 is 2047, and next year is the 50th anniversary of the handover of Hong Kong. So, lest anybody thinks my maths is off, I've corrected that now.
It's actually not the 50th anniversary of the handover of Hong Kong. It'll be the 30th. 1997 to 2027.
Okay, so my maths is wrong. Okay, we have established that now.
Yes, stick with diplomacy.
Anyway, back to the question.
It ends with a 7. And the question was?
The question was, will Trump's invasion of Iran encourage China to invade Taiwan? No, we've already done that one. It wasn't. Is Starmer right? The regime change from the skies never works.
Yes, he is. And there is not a single case in history where regime change has been accomplished by a foreign power from the air. What works is if people are trying to achieve regime change on their own and are then assisted by a foreign power. But they've got to want it themselves, and they've got to have a leader themselves. Now, it is easy for us to say in Western countries they have to rise up, and it is jolly hard to rise up in an authoritarian country. It is incredibly difficult and dangerous, and almost nobody wants to stick their head above the parapet because it is incredibly dangerous. We have seen it in Venezuela and virtually,
apart from the fact that they did only 2 months ago. I mean, there was massive protests all over Iran.
Yes. And unfortunately unsuccessful because the regime was so ruthless. But that's the kind of movement that Western countries could then try to support. I'm not sure that air power would be the best means to do it, but you have to then seize that moment and then not come in at a moment that suits you and say, we are going to do this for you now, and please rise up in response.
Elizabeth, you have a real fan on my email who says, really enjoying listening to the lady on the panel tonight. She sounds so very clever, very refreshing. Can she come back again, Iain?
Compared to the other panellists.
Or are you going to ban her for being smarter than the men?
Well,
Sorry.
I've always, my whole career is based on women who took a chance on me from politics to my professional career. So I second that as well.
I'll take a chance on you.
Well, there we go. One interesting thing about, this getting people, in Iran ready. Let's go back again a couple of years back when we had those dreadful and awful cases with Mahsa Amini, a woman, who just showed here or whatever, and the way it was suppressed. People did come out then. More recently, as you rightly said, Iain, people did come out then. Now, again, if you're an Iranian citizen hearing this call from across the pond saying, come out when the time's right, you're going to say, we did it twice before, and no one came. What's the guarantee it's going to happen?
Not just twice, it happened
beforehand as well.
About 20 years ago, didn't it?
Yeah.
Right, more questions, 0345 6060 973. And just to tell you, after 9 o'clock, Sian Williams will be joining us. Dr. Sian Williams, you may know her as a TV presenter, but she's also a qualified psychotherapist, and she's got a new book out on anxiety. And there is a phenomenon called war anxiety, people getting very anxious about the prospect of a third world war. And I remember when Putin invaded Ukraine, there was a lot of evidence that people were getting very anxious about the prospect of a nuclear war. So if you have war anxiety, I'd love to hear from you after 9, and I'm sure Sian Williams will be able to offer some very good advice. It's 8:48.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Who's in charge of the British government? Is it Keir Starmer or Ed Miliband? And one of America's most senior senators tells us he still has no idea what the war aims are in Iran.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
It's hard to concentrate when you're worried about your health. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world, like you can't be fully present.
Hello, AXA Health. How can I help?
At AXA Health Insurance, we build our teams with people who care. So when you need us, we're here to support you. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. Pre-existing conditions are not covered.
At TfL, we're opening up more of London for everyone with step-free access.
We're continuing to improve accessibility at many of our stations, and now over 200 stations and counting have step-free access, including the entire Elizabeth Line, DLR and all tram stops. That is how we're making the greener way to travel more accessible to all. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Greener than total estimated petrol and diesel car emissions.
The new single drops. The world tour begins. As artists create the music we love, you could be right there in the mix. Calling all young creatives. If you want a career in music, then listen up. Global Academy have a new sixth form music production course. State-of-the-art studios, practical experience, hands-on learning with music professionals. Awesome! Apply now at globalacademy.com.
How big's the job? Compact and nimble? That's the Vauxhall Combo. A bit of everything? Meet the award-winning Vivaro. Or is it a load-it-all job? That's Movano. Whatever the job, there's a Vauxhall van for it. Right now, during the Vauxhall Pro Days van event until the 16th of March, you can save £750 off any new Vauxhall van, electric or diesel, on top of all other offers. Search Vauxhall Van Range. Business users only, 18 plus, £750 excluding VAT. T's and C's apply. Search Vauxhall Van Range.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:51 with us on Cross Question tonight, Lord Tariq Ahmed, Alex Ballinger MP and Elizabeth Braw. Right, another question on the phone from John in Reading. Hi, John.
Good evening, people. How are we doing?
We're doing very well, thank you for asking. What would you like to ask?
I've got a cracker of a question. Okay, is Zelensky more powerful in the Middle East now that he can make super cheap drones, which are more better than a missile?
Wow. Tariq?
Well, I think President Zelensky, and I have met him a few times.
Have you?
Yeah. Actually, here's a little story. I know we've only got a short... 2019, when Jeremy and Boris were sort of slugging it out for the leadership, I got a call from Jeremy. He was the foreign secretary, and he said, Tariq, can you get on the plane and go to the inauguration of the new president of Ukraine? So I actually lay claim to being the first international delegate to actually meet with President Zelensky a long time ago now. But I think he is in a slightly different position now, because when you're at war, there's a lot you learn. And I think there's a real serious side. He's had to deal with drones, and he's had to deal with the typical drones coming in, which Iran provided to Russia. So I think he's learnt from that exercise. He can now provide a degree of expertise. And indeed, today he quite publicly said that he wants to work with people to see how he can help.
Elizabeth?
Well, he's very definitely in a better position than he was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. When you are the country that has been invaded, if you are the weaker country, then you are the supplicant. You need to ask. You have no choice but to ask other countries for help, and you feel very lucky or fortunate and grateful if they decide to help you. And some countries have decided to help Ukraine, some not so much. But Ukraine still has to go around with a begging bowl. And now it has something that one country, one very powerful country, desperately needs, which is those drones. It's not a completely transformed position, but it is an advantageous position, because it's the first time that Ukraine has had anything that America needs. And it's also, I think, a bit of a learning experience for America, because they set out in this war thinking that they wouldn't need anything from anybody except maybe Diego Garcia and the Spanish base, but Ukrainian drones were... Well. But now Zelensky has a trump card, as it were.
Oh, very good. She'd be on Saturday Night Live.
That's why she's brighter than the two of us.
Exactly.
That was
Alex.
So, yes, but I also wonder if America had concentrated its efforts, all of this resources that it's putting into fighting the war in Iran, into Ukraine instead. If it had supported Zelensky in the way that Biden was supporting him before the election, what a different situation we might have in Ukraine right now. We might be getting closer to a negotiation with Vladimir Putin and a peace deal, rather than this ongoing, grinding, attritional war that we're seeing. But yes, absolutely, there is technology the Ukrainians are learning from, are preparing, that we should take away as well. But I don't think, and you'll hear this when you speak to military commanders in the UK, the war that we'll fight in the future, the war that the Americans will fight in the future, is not the same as the war that the Ukrainians are fighting the Russians. We want to have a much more high-tech and less attritional way of doing that. So there are lessons, but it's not every single thing that's going to be useful to us.
Right, let's go to... thank you very much for that, John. Let's go to a text question from Max in Weston-super-Mare. What do you expect to happen to the numbers of small boats crossing the Channel in the aftermath of this Iran conflict? Because I suppose that is possibly a consequence, that if it all goes wrong and we get another Iraq and Iran, there will be possibly millions of Iranians coming Europe's way. Elizabeth?
Yes. There is a history to this, which is when conflicts erupt somewhere, people try to get to Europe. That is just the way it usually works. It was that way during the Iraq War, and now that is likely to happen. And these refugees who need to flee somewhere clearly won't have the means to flee to the United States and possibly wouldn't be received there under the current rules. So they will try to get to Europe, and that is logical, which means that they will try to come not just continental Europe, but to the UK. And this is the irony in this, Iain, is it not? That this was a war of choice, and the United States is executing the war as it has decided to execute it. But we in Europe will feel the consequences. Obviously, the people on the ground in Iran and elsewhere in the Middle East will feel the consequences most dramatically, most powerful. But we will feel them too. And we are the countries that have been criticized by the Trump administration for receiving too many refugees. Something doesn't rhyme there.
Okay. Tarek?
Yeah, well, we're already seeing that. There are people crossing, as we speak, into the border with Turkey and into Turkey. And when I heard that, it was also sort of bringing back memories of the Syrian conflict, that we saw thousands and thousands of people enter Turkey, enter Lebanon, enter Jordan, staying in camps. And of course, you'll recall we had a special scheme at that time with the Home Office for Syrian settlement as well. I don't think the climate is the same now. It's changed. That we could have another whole conversation on the word migration, and it's become an almost dirty word in politics here, and we've got to seize back the narrative. On the specifics, yes, when there's wars, people move. If there were bombs falling on our head in the studio, we'd want to take cover. If they continued to fall, we'd want to go to another location. So it's a natural human instinct to go and protect yourself and your family. And I think unless we see, again, it comes back to where we were, and I think we agreed on that principle. If you go in and you begin a conflict with no end game, no exit strategy, the people who are feeling the brunt of it, which is the Iranian civilians at the moment, who have nothing, and many of them despise the rulers above them, are having to suffer the consequences, and they will seek security.
Okay. Alex?
Well, my first job overseas with the Department for International Development after I left the Royal Marines was working with Syrian refugees. And there were over 3 million Syrian refugees left Syria to go to Turkey. There was more than 1 million in Lebanon, 1.5 million in Jordan, and also Syrians that went to Iraq. So the countries that will bear the brunt of it the most are going to be neighbouring countries. So I wouldn't be surprised Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, maybe we'll see people coming in large numbers. At that time, we had a very big programme with the Turks and the Jordanians to support refugees in the region. I think that's a model that if this country does collapse into civil war, which is a possibility, that we should be encouraging the Americans and others to support, because the best place for refugees, I think, is closer to the country that they're from, and it gives them the best opportunity in the future if there is a return, if the situation does improve, to return back and start to rebuild.
Right. Time for our fun question. It's from Annabelle in Mablethorpe. I have no idea where Mablethorpe is. Today is World Book Day. As a kid, it was always a highlight of the year to dress up as Mr. Chatterbox or the Very Hungry Caterpillar. No idea what books they're from. What is the panel's favourite book, either from their childhood or currently, or even both? Elizabeth.
Iain, you don't know The Hungry Caterpillar?
No.
You have missed...
I was Enid Blyton era.
Well, it's never too late. My favourite book as an adult, I would recommend to adults is Mephisto by Klaus Mann. It's he's obviously was a German novelist, and this book is about somebody who sacrifices all his principles to rise up to the highest ranks of German society, German acting during the Nazi era.
Alex?
So I love a good murder mystery. I read too much non-fiction in my time as an MP. So I love the books by Robert Galbraith. It's the Cormoran Strike novels. They've been made into a TV series on the BBC as well. Gruesome murder, interesting, intriguing plots, and a bit of a love story as well.
You have a lot in common with Jackie Smith. She loves a brutal murder book or
Excellent.
drama.
There's worse people to be compared.
Tarek?
I, like you, I did the whole set. I've still got the famous 5 Secret 7. It's stashed away in that. But there was a book by Enid Blyton, The Boy Next Door, which I found quite intriguing. But I talked about 3 children earlier as well. There's a fantastic book called The Book with No Pictures, which is based on strange words, and all of my 3 children absolutely loved it, and it's great. And we had a great laugh dressing the children up when they were younger, going with blank pieces of paper and blank dress. Although I would say when we were younger, you had to really dig deep to try and be animated. My other thing was sport. I was a Ray Clements. I used to idolise Ray Clements. So much so, I used to emulate his mistakes if I was playing football in goal. I was never tall enough to quite make it to the 11-a-side team.
Well, let's
I used to dress up as Ray Clements in an England shirt.
Let's hope the Tottenham goalkeeper makes a lot of mistakes in their match tonight. I'm very disappointed none of you picked my biography of Margaret Thatcher as your favourite book. But I'm going to nominate The Magic Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton as mine. Yeah. Thank you all very much indeed. Really, really interesting hour. Now, coming up on Monday's panel, I need to tell you who's on Monday's panel, which I just need to scroll up. Right. MPs Darren Paffy from the Labour Party, Pippa Halings from the Lib Dems, and the former Conservative Policy Advisor Tom Skinner. Right, coming up in the next hour, we are going to talk about this book, if you're watching. It's called The Power of Anxiety, How to Ride the Worry Wave. It's by Dr. Sian Williams. Now, you will know Sian from BBC Breakfast, from Channel 5 News, but she's retrained as a psychotherapist, and she's going to be here to tell us all about the book and to talk about anxiety in general. But one of the things I'm going to ask her about is so-called war anxiety, because I think this is something that afflicts more people than we might actually know or guess. So if you have war anxiety, does this war in Iran make you think, well, what if there's a world war? What if there's a nuclear war? How do we cope with that? Give her a call, 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the Defence Secretary has told LBC that Britain has been stepping up air defences in Cyprus for weeks after criticism of the UK's handling of the war in Iran. John Healey's said top military planners are arriving on the island today, followed by anti-drone helicopters overnight. He wouldn't, though, discuss reports Ed Miliband led resistance to any UK involvement in the conflict.
I am simply, I've been in public life for many years, and I make it a point of practice never to comment on private conversations.
Well, the Prime Minister says his number one priority is protecting our people, as he gave an update on the situation in the Middle East earlier. Sir Keir Starmer says 4 additional Typhoon jets will be sent to bolster British defences in Qatar. The UK has come under criticism for its response to the crisis, but the Prime Minister said jets were in the air as soon as the first strikes took place on Saturday.
Flying over Cyprus and the wider region, shooting down multiple drones, at least one of which was heading towards a base housing British military personnel.
Former International Development Secretary Claire Short resigned from the Blair cabinet over Iraq. She's told LBC that the government needs to be clear and confident with its strategy.
Britain's so entangled with the US and so entangled with the idea that it makes us important to have what we call a special relationship, but not very many people in the US do. And you're getting all this fudging now. I mean, if it was wrong to attack, then it's wrong to give America the authority to use our bases to continue to attack.
Labour MP Joni Reid has voluntarily suspended herself from the party after her husband was arrested on suspicion of spying for China. In a statement, the MP for East Kilbride and Straven says it's whilst an internal investigation takes place. And the cost of some new mortgages is going up, with experts blaming the Middle East conflict for higher inflation expectations. HSBC and Coventry Building Society are among the lenders upping their rates. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 162 points at 10,405. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.14. LBC weather: showers, some wintry in the north and west tonight, clear and dry elsewhere, lows of -2. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
9:05 on LBC. Welcome to the programme if you've just joined us. You missed a cracking cross-question there. I think some really, really, really incisive views on what's happening in the Middle East. Now, I've been looking forward to this hour for ages because I got to know Sian Williams, how many years ago
Don't
is it?
go
It's
there.
not that many, actually.
Do you know, it feels like it's been a long time.
Anyway, Sian Williams is here with me for the next hour, and it's partly, but not exclusively, because she's written this book. It's called The Power of Anxiety, How to Ride the Worry Wave, which I have a bit of a Jonathan Ross affliction there, that how to ride the worry wave. It's quite difficult to say.
You did it brilliantly, beautifully.
And I mean, I think it's fascinating that you have, you still are a broadcaster, but you've retrained to be now, I said psychotherapist earlier. Is that right, or is it psychologist?
Well, I'm a doctor of counselling psychology. Counselling psychology is a protected term. So those who get it, clinical psychology, counselling psychology, sports psychology, educational psychology, you have to jump through a lot of hoops. And so I'm an associate fellow of the British Psychological Society, and you have to do a certain number of hours.
Very grand.
It does sound grand, doesn't it? But it's, I'm 61, Ian. It's taken me a while to get here. Let's say that. But no, it didn't feel like a sort of handbrake turn of a career change. And I'm still broadcasting. So half the week I've got a Radio 4 programme and a Radio 3 programme. But the other half of the week I'm in the NHS as a psychologist. It was something I was really interested in doing. And I was so average at school, and not very good at exams, not very good at studying. And then in my 40s, I thought, you know what, it'd be nice to do something else. So I started learning about psychology. I did a master's, science.
But why?
Master's.
What drove? Because there are lots of things you could have done, and you chose this.
I think I'd been trained as a trauma assessor in the BBC because I'd noticed that,
Insert your own joke here.
Yes, well, indeed. Or not, as I still work for them. So I trained as a trauma assessor at the BBC because I was noticing that some of my colleagues were experiencing effects of reporting on really difficult and challenging news stories, but feeling as though they couldn't have this emotion because they weren't the ones suffering. They were the ones witnessing the suffering. I work now with emergency responders, police officers, firefighters, ambulance staff. They say exactly the same thing, which is it's not my suffering, therefore I can't feel distress. They absolutely are entitled to their distress because things are very upsetting when you're running in to help and you're seeing really difficult things. That does have an emotional effect on you. So I was seeing that, and I was seeing the guilt that people were feeling for having those emotions and thinking it's much better to talk about this stuff. Trained as a trauma assessor. And then I thought I'll do a master's in psychology. And then I thought, well, I need to know more about the brain. So I did a professional doctorate and sort of worked in the NHS and with people with cancer and family therapy and just sort of sitting in front of people, listening to, being invited into their lives and helping them with tough stuff, I guess.
What was part of your motivation thinking, don't take offence at this, but I'm reaching a certain age and it is more difficult. Well, the narrative goes it's more difficult for older women in broadcasting to get the kind of work that younger women get. Now, I've never been wholly sure that that's true because I actually think it can apply to men as well. But was that part of the motivation, thinking, I need to have a second career ready?
In truth, it wasn't, because I've always been lucky to have work. And I never felt that myself. I didn't feel as though, the clock's ticking. You've been find a different career in case somebody chucks you out. I had a really amazing career with the BBC in television news. I worked in television news for 35 years. So I was on BBC Breakfast for 11 years and absolutely loved it. And when that show moved up to Manchester, and as you know, I've got 5 kids, I knew I couldn't go because they're all in various stages of life. So I wanted to try something else. I did some weekend shows, and that freed up time during the week. And I thought, you were quite an average student. Is there something you've always wanted to do? And so I signed up a bit on a whim, actually, to this master's, thinking, yeah, let's have a go, but not with a career strategy in mind. I've never had a career plan. It's been, what's the interesting thing that's in front of you? Do you fancy it? Give it a go. And you fail. Tell you what, when you go back as a student, it's quite humbling. And I remember one supervisor saying to me, you may think of yourself as a success out there, but in here you're a student, and in here you will fail, and you have. And that really brings you back down to earth. And also going into the NHS, I went into the NHS. I was working in an office. It was somebody else's office my very first day. The clock didn't work. The plant was dead. There were no tissues. And I phoned up my brother later that night, and he said, yeah, you see, stepped away from the glamour of telly, and this is what, he works in the NHS, he has done all his life, most of my family do. This is what it's, welcome to the NHS. But it is full of people who are there for a vocation. Yeah. And honestly, the NHS, as anyone will know who visits it and who works there, because healthcare workers are remarkable people, they face such a lot of difficult stuff, and still they turn up every day. And anyone who's been in hospital, as I have, and, we've all had health complaints from time to time, will know that these people are just holding the whole thing together, and it's a privilege to work there.
What lies behind the book, The Power of Anxiety? I mean, do you think, have you written it for everybody, or just people who tend to suffer for whatever reason from anxiety?
Everybody has anxiety.
I said suffer. Should I have said suffer? Experience.
Well, I prefer experience. I don't like suffers and victims. And I see anxiety as a clinical necessity. We do not want to get rid of anxiety. It is the thing that protects us and keeps us safe. What is that knocking in my car? Do I need to get it fixed? Yes. That is productive worrying. Is this relationship feeling a bit odd? Should we look at it? That is productive worrying. Unproductive worrying is when anxiety is switched on all the time, or switched on when it doesn't need to be. And there can be a whole host of reasons why that happens. It can happen because of your early childhood and attachment history. Who was there for you? Who was listening to you when you were growing up? Did you feel valued? All these sorts of things can play into anxiety and feelings of, am I being rejected? So there can be very good reasons why people are anxious, especially now, gosh. But also we don't want to get rid of it. So the whole premise of the book is, don't fight it, don't struggle with it. We know it makes it bigger if we do that. What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. That's what Carl Jung said, and it's absolutely right. That's what all the research says. What we need to do is say anxiety is an important part of the way we live. When is it helpful? When is it harmful? If it's harmful, what do I do about it? And that's the tips and tools and exercises in the book help you do that.
And do people who have anxiety always know that they've got it? Do they recognise it in themselves?
That's a really good question, Ian. I think sometimes you can be in a vortex of rumination where your thoughts are going round and round and round and round, and it's hard to see yourself in it because you're in a threat state. And when you're in a threat state, there's a bit of the brain called the amygdala, which is like sort of scanning the horizon for threats and dangers. And it's going off, whack, 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 whack. And when that's happening, the front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, all the stuff that does context and rationality and all that sort of stuff is not working effectively. And that's why it's not good to react from a place of threat and fear. But often when you're in that place, you don't see it yourself, or you don't see how deep you are in it. And many people who come to me in the NHS will say, I think I'm fine, and yet sometimes this happens, and you think, oh, okay, this is an issue here. We need to look at this because this is affecting your everyday life. It's affecting your relationships. It's affecting what happens at work. So it is playing a big part. It doesn't need to be. It's healable. How do we start healing it? But sometimes it's hard to see that when you're wrapped in the constant vortex of worrying thoughts. And worry can be a habit. You can just get caught up in it.
I'll give you a little example, which is completely insignificant in many ways. But I mean, I've always thought of myself as somebody who doesn't suffer from anxiety. But I mean, we're sitting here in this studio, and you'll see my phone box screen there, where the phone calls come in, and on the right-hand side, there's texts and WhatsApp messages that come in live.
Right.
When I was covering the sort of height of the Israel-Gaza conflict, the messages that would come in were just so disgusting and vile, and accusing me of all sorts of things, beliefs that I didn't hold, my motivations and all the rest of it. And I was going home on the train one night and just sort of thinking about this, and then I realised that a tear was running down my face. Now, I'll cry at anything, but I thought, this is not healthy. This is not where you want to be. And so whenever I talked about Israel-Gaza, I would switch that off, and I would leave it to my producers to put the text through, the ones that they thought I should be reading out, because it was becoming not only distracting, but I mean, it did affect me.
Of course it would. Of course it would, though. It's like having somebody on your shoulder constantly telling you you're no good.
Yeah.
And what does that do for your self-esteem and self-confidence? Why would you want to continue broadcasting? I can absolutely see that. And what you did there was protect yourself to continue to do your job by saying, this bit I don't need to see at the moment. Somebody else can look at this and feed these messages through to me. So that's really important. I would say something, actually, Iain, and I do know you. You are a sensitive, empathic individual, which is why you're a good journalist. And I think a lot of highly sensitive people can pick up the stimuli around them and react to it instinctively, or react to it sometimes intensely. And that can, you have to mitigate against that and put in protective strategies in place. But that's also what makes you a very intuitive, empathic broadcaster. So you can't really have one without the other. If you're a highly sensitive individual, and that makes you good at your job because you listen and pay attention and respond to people compassionately, that's really important. To do that, you need to protect yourself. And there are tips in the book for highly sensitive people about what works to protect you so that you can thrive. It's like the difference between a dandelion and an orchid. This isn't my theory. It comes from W. Thomas Boyce, who was a paediatrician. He said that dandelions kind of spring up from cracks in the pavement and dry ground, and they're always there and always perky, very resilient and hardy. The orchids can wilt under the wrong environment, but in the right environment, they thrive. You just need to give them the right soil and light and water to do that. If we're in the right environment, if we're protecting ourselves and looking after ourselves, then highly sensitive people are incredible.
So basically, I'm a delicate little orchid. That's what you're saying.
You're not a delicate little orchid, you're a magnificent orchid.
Right. Now, Sian, we'd love to hear from you with your own experiences of anxiety, how you've maybe got through it, or maybe you haven't, maybe you're experiencing it at the moment. And particularly as we're in this awful sort of international climate where nobody really has any certainty anymore. And I think that leads to anxiety. I know when Russia invaded Ukraine, I would have a lot of callers saying, well, I'm really anxious about the prospect of a nuclear war. And I would sort of try and say, no, that's not going to happen. But it affects some people in a very emotional way where it doesn't affect others. And I've always wondered why that is. Is it the way that our brains are made up? We'll talk about that to Sian in just a moment. So we want your experiences of anxiety as well. Sian's not here to be a counsellor in this hour as such, but I'm sure she'll be interested in hearing your experiences. It's 18 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, barrel leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
Some days it feels like your to-do list just won't quit. When life gets hectic, let Halfords take something off your plate. We're here when you need us, with trusted experts ready to help you tick off MOTs, servicing, tyre fitting and more. So your car's ready for whatever's ahead. So why put it off? Get in touch or drop in today. Book online at halfords.com or give your local Halfords garage a call and we'll sort it so you can keep moving with confidence.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:20 on LBC. Sian Williams is with me, Dr. Sian Williams. She's written this book, The Power of Anxiety, How to Ride the Worry Wave. Just explain the cover, which obviously if you're not watching, you can't see it. But, well, you describe it yourself.
Okay, well, the reason it's got that subtitle, it comes from somebody called John Kabat-Zinn, who's a mindfulness expert. I was trained in mindfulness, just an additional bit to doing the doctorate. And he has this lovely quote, which is, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And that typified anxiety to me, which is, you can't stop it, it's going to be there, but we can learn to ride with it if we know how to do it. So the cover, which is a lovely colour, my favourite colour of blue, and it's got a little surfer on it with a yellow surfboard who is surfing the worry wave, who's trying to sort of navigate the storms and just ride the waves and see when they're coming. And
how much do you think that politics and current affairs and world events really plays on people's general state of mindfulness and causes anxiety?
I think it plays a big part. I mean, where you think we had the pandemic, then we had the war with Ukraine, now we have this. We are living in a time of global uncertainty. You've done phone-ins before about young children, student loans, not being able to get on the housing ladder, the climate uncertainty. There is a lot of stuff at the moment to be anxious about, and I think there can often be this feeling of real helplessness. That is very normal. And at the moment, with what's happening in Iran, a fear about how it might spread, will it impact me, especially among service families, but also what are the indirect effects, energy prices and oil prices and things like that. And when the brain has a vacancy, when it doesn't have enough facts to know on, i.e. the answer to the question, what's going to happen next, it tries to find answers, and that's not always helpful. That's when the ruminating worry brain starts, when you try to go through all the worst case scenarios and you end up having lots of questions but no answers because you can't get the answer. We are living in an uncertain time and we don't have control over what Donald Trump is or anybody else is going to do. We do have control over what we can do. So we control our own controllables, as it were. So I think when you recognise that you are in a place of threat and danger, and you notice it, anxiety is not just in the head. We carry it in our bodies. Sometimes I'm sure you will notice, have I got it in my stomach? Is it in my chest? My palms starting to itch or sweat. The way we react to anxiety is held bodily, it's in the brain, but it's also in our behaviour. Some people will want to withdraw and avoid from all news at the moment. I don't want to know about it, don't tell me about it, because that feels like it's protecting them. Other people will want to know as much as possible in order for them to get as many answers as they can. They will never get all the answers they need because we're not in that time. And I think sometimes there is a danger when you feel hypervigilant, I've got to know everything, that you end up being immersed in news all the time and it's hard to switch off. So you need to sort of structure in times away and breaks because it's not helpful.
And does anxiety affect different generations in different ways? Because I think there would be the stereotype of, British stiff upper lip, the older generations just got on with it. In the run-up to the Second World War, they just got on with it. Yes. Whereas now, again, stereotypically, you have people saying, the younger generation, they're so woke and they're so full of anxiety. They should pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
Yeah, I hear that. I don't think we can deny anybody their feelings. And also, I think when we talk about young, but we're not in the young people's place at the moment. As I say, I've got 5 kids. They span from 17, it's the 17th birthday today, all the way to 34.
What a bad mother you are, coming on here.
I saw her first. I took her out to dinner, and then she went home with her dad because she's got to go to bed because it's school in the morning.
No need to be so defensive.
I know. That was a defensive reaction, wasn't it? Notice, Sean, your reaction when you were asked a difficult question. Yes. So I don't think we can deny young people their feelings of anxiety because they are real and they are different to what we experience. That's not to say we didn't experience anxiety. Everybody does. But we might have experienced it in a different way. Now, you and I, similar age, I was told that we didn't really talk about emotions. I don't even remember the word anxious being used. I remember being told not to be so sensitive and to grow a thicker skin, especially if I was going to go into journalism. I think actually being sensitive has helped me in journalism and as a psychologist. But we didn't talk about stuff like that then. But in this book, I was researching my own family history. My grandmother was somebody who, quotes, suffered with her nerves.
That was a phrase, wasn't it?
That was a phrase.
Yes.
Suffered with her nerves. And it's terribly stigmatising. And she spent her whole life worrying she was either going to be sent to the asylum or the poorhouse because she wasn't listened to. Nobody asked her, what is going on? Why? I mean, her father took his own life and they were very poor and they were threatened with the poorhouse. So there were reasons, really valid reasons why she should feel nervous. But that sort of belittling of somebody's emotions, I think that's always happened. I think people of our age probably were belittled if they did try to talk about their emotions when they were younger. You know, it isn't the place for it.
And do you think the impact of social media has, in some ways, helped people talk about their anxiety, but in other ways has stigmatised it, where you are made to feel as if you are weak in a way, if you do suffer anxiety because of maybe the bullying or trolling that you've experienced on the internet? Yeah.
I think there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. That's the first thing to say. So I think people can go down a bit of a rabbit hole. I think, yes, there can be bullying and yes, there can be trolling. And I think in both instances, there is a danger that you're being taken down a path which is not helpful for you. And it's recognising when you're being dragged down that path and just pull yourself back out and go to your trusted sources, go to your trusted people, you know, your safe places, your refuges, especially in a time like now. That's absolutely what we ought to be doing. But yes, I mean, obviously, that social media can be a wonderful thing in terms of connection. And I know a lot of neurodivergent people, and during the pandemic, it was really important for them to develop those connections. It was for a lot of young people. Online, it was the only way they could do it. So I'm not somebody who says you must ban it, but I am somebody who says if you are a carer, a parent, an educator, then we need to help our children understand how to use it wisely so that they go to the right places. Don't let anyone into your head and your heart and your home. Be quite selective about who you choose.
You've got some wonderful chapter titles in this book. I mean, we've already talked about the first one, Dandelion or Orchid. I'm going to pick a couple of random ones here, and just if you can summarise the message that you're trying to convey. Imposter syndrome, performance and social anxiety.
Yes. So, everybody has imposter syndrome at some point.
A lot of people deny it.
Right.
Do you think they still have it? Oh, I still have it all the time.
Yeah.
I still can't believe that I'm sitting in this chair.
Do you know, the therapists who have most self-doubt in research are suggested to be the most effective ones because they're always reflecting on their own behaviour. But yes, imposter syndrome is so prevalent that the people who came up with it were a couple of female doctors who noticed it in women, professional women. They said it was so prevalent they should call it imposter experience because everybody experiences imposter syndrome or imposter phenomena. I think what's really interesting about performance anxiety is I speak to a drummer in Radiohead. You know the band Radiohead?
I do.
I loved Radiohead.
Don't ask me any of this. was that? No, that was
Okay.
Coldplay, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's all right. So in 1993 they put out "Creep," which is a big.
Oh no, I do
you
love
like
that song.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Philip Selway, who's the brilliant drummer of Radiohead, talked to me about performance anxiety. They were a band in Oxford. All of a sudden, they're on big stages, huge stadia. And his performance anxiety was such that he couldn't connect with the drums. And he thought, I'm writing myself out of this particular script at the moment. It was really hard for him. And I said, I bet nobody noticed. He said, yeah, people noticed. And how he lived with that, I went to see him in concert last year, how he lived with that is brilliant, because he said he reframed it. He reframed it as, what is this trying to tell me? It's about, am I being a perfectionist? Do I want this to go absolutely brilliantly? I'm part of a band. It's the whole thing. People are enjoying the experience. So when he talks about his gremlins, he sees them, he knows what they're trying to do, he hears the self-critical voice, and he uses any anxiety he feels to fuel his performance rather than fell it. So it's a help rather than a hindrance.
That's interesting, because I feel a bit like, it's very funny. This afternoon, I was interviewing Clyde Best, who was Britain's effectively first star black footballer back in the 1970s, played for West Ham. It's going out on the podcast next week. And Corey, my producer, apparently said to the people in the gallery, when I started the interview, he said, God, Ian's really nervous about this. And he doesn't get nervous very often. And it was because he was a bit of a hero of mine.
Yes.
And it was slightly outside my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I think is right. It's like when I interviewed Joan Collins years and years ago. I mean, I was absolutely cacking it, to coin a phrase.
I bet she was delightful. I've interviewed her.
Oh, she was brilliant. She was absolutely. As long as you, Joan Rivers was the same. As the interviewer, you have to understand your role, and your role is to bat the ball over the net for them to volley it back at you. And it's not about you.
No, it's not about you. And actually, that's really important about performance anxiety, because it's very rarely about you. If you're presenting a program, so I presented Daily News for 35 years, absolutely loved it. Loved being on breakfast, loved doing the bulletins, loved live shows. There needs to be some degree of adrenaline and cortisol before you do a show, because otherwise you lapse into complacency. Now, some have suggested that I was somehow sort of racked with stress and anxiety, and that's never been the case. And I work with people who can't work because of their anxiety or can't go out, and that is a very difficult situation, and we work together to get them through that. But there's no doubt that there has to be an element of something going on, and then you can use that. You can tune into that. Butterflies in the stomach, whatever it is, the heart beating slightly faster. So rather than panicking about it, you become a bit more curious about it. Oh, that's interesting. Here we go again. I'm psyching myself up to sit next to Ian.
Said no one ever. Right, we've got lots of calls coming in. We're going to come to them in a moment. So if you'd like to talk to Sian, 0345 6060 973. It's 9:32. News headlines on LBC from, and it's gone off the top of my screen, Daryl Jackson.
The Defence Secretary has told LBC that Britain has been stepping up air defences in Cyprus for weeks after criticism of the UK's handling of the war in Iran. John Healey's said top military planners are arriving on the island today, followed by anti-drone helicopters overnight. The Prime Minister says his number one priority is protecting our people, as he gave an update on the situation in the Middle East. Sir Keir Starmer says 4 additional Typhoon jets will be sent to bolster British defences in Qatar. And the Home Secretary's set out plans to remove accommodation from asylum seekers who break the law under proposed migration reforms. Shabana Mahmood also says migrants could be paid £40,000 per family to leave the country. LBC weather: showers, some wintry in the north and west tonight, clear and dry elsewhere, lows of -2.
This is LBC.
Hey you! Yeah, you! What would you like from your investing app? 6% interest on your ISA, a free share of your choice, or no commission on stocks and ETFs up to €100,000 per month? With XTB, you get all of the above all in one app, the XTB app. Get your free share and start investing with XTB today. XTB, where your money works.
Capital at risk. Investment values can rise or fall. Limited free stock availability. 2% ISA rate boost for 90 days. New clients only. T's and C's apply.
At Pets in a Pickle, we're here when it matters most. For fuss-free pet insurance policies as unique as they are. Visit petsinnerpickle.co.uk.
A southern train is a place where family moments become more peaceful. Where you can spread out and a game of I Spy gets a scenic upgrade with snacks, stories and the occasional sheep for a bonus point. Less stress, more yes with kids' tickets for £2 at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
You want £1 million?
I'd love £1 million.
So you enter the birthday draw and you think of a way to spend £1 million.
I'd pay off my mortgage and my mum's mortgage.
It's your lucky day and you win the birthday draw. But you forget to pay off those mortgages.
Whoops.
Because you're on a cruise with lots of money.
Money cruise, baby!
Is it your lucky day? For your chance to win £1 million, just search the birthday draw and enter now. From Global and ITV. 18 plus UK only. No purchase necessary.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:35 here on LBC. Dr. Sian Williams is with us. Her book is called The Power of Anxiety, How to Ride the Worry Wave. It's quite a chunky book, isn't it? I've just seen we share a publisher, Allen and Unwin.
We do.
They did
in
a book
fact,
with
I
me.
was there today and I saw your book there.
Marvellous. Years ago that came out,
Mm-hmm.
and it's $14.99. It's a large format paperback, quite large type, which is I always find a good thing nowadays in my dotage.
I think so too, and lots of references. That's probably why it's so big. But also lots of exercises, and I'd like you to do the highly sensitive.
I'm going to do
test
that, and I'm going to let you know what the result is.
And the perfectionist test.
If I come out as a hard B.
Yep.
To save myself there. I probably won't tell you that, but I wanted to reinforce what you've said. Right, let's go to our first call to Sian. It's from Luke in Bromley. Hi, Luke.
Hi.
Hi, great. It's wonderful to be here. I'm speaking to you. My situation is I have anxiety pretty bad indeed. It goes on and off through the day, and mine is triggered by Parkinson's disease. I've actually spoken to Ian a number of times through the year.
You have?
I can't hear Luke, by the way.
Oh.
No.
Now that doesn't work. Right, what we're going to do
sorry,
is,
Luke,
stay there. We will come back to you. We'll make sure that Sian can hear you in a couple of minutes' time. But let's take a text comment from Stephen, who... I better click the right button here. You'd think I'd be able to do this by now, wouldn't you? Right. Stephen says, I have just decided to retire from the emergency services after diagnosis of ME/CFS. What's CFS?
There are a number of CFSs, but go on to...
Okay, because including much chronic hidden anxiety.
Yeah.
Further investigation resulted in the problems being decades of fight or flight mode, resulting in vagus nerve problems. Hyperadrenaline, CFS, PEM. People have to watch out for this.
Yes, thank you so much. Is that Stephen, did you say? Thank you, Stephen. I work with the emergency services. I recognise this a lot. There is a lot of fight, flight, freeze, because that is absolutely what you need to do. You need to be on your guard for the next call that comes in. And I think sometimes it can be really hard to switch off from that. I think also, I don't know whether you heard me earlier talking about how hard it can be for anyone in the emergency services to say, I need help, because they don't feel that it's their crisis. They don't feel that it's their trauma that they're getting into. I think sometimes the environments don't allow you to talk about your mental health. If you stay inside and withdraw and away from people and the things that support you, we know that that can make it worse. So I'd really like to hear what Stephen is doing to support himself, whether he's reached out to his colleagues. You know, when I do groups. I've done groups with the police, I've done groups with ambulance and with firefighters. And when they get together, somebody will break the silence and say, you know what, I've been feeling a bit like this. And then everybody chips in and everybody is feeling it. And I think that it's really important to have that peer support, to rely as well on your colleagues and to share something. In the ambulance service, there was one person who said that, you know, they do it over donuts at the end of the day. They have donuts, they decompress, they talk to one another. That is incredibly supportive. I would also say make sure your organisation, I don't know where you work, Stephen, but make sure the organisation supports you and that you feel you can ask for help, that you have a supportive line manager and that you know where to go when you need help.
Right, let's try and see if you can hear Luke this time.
Okay.
Luke, can you hear now, Sean?
No. I'm really sorry, Luke. I can't hear you.
Well, I don't know what's going on here.
No.
If we can get Corey to come into the studio to sort of re-plug Sean in, that would be
a great
appreciated
thing.
Because I'm not going to answer the questions because I'm not qualified to do so.
So
I've got another.
Stephen answer.
I've got another text here.
Okay.
This is. Would you believe it? I've gone and deleted it.
It's all going very well.
This is all going terribly well, isn't it?
Shall I give you a couple of tips of how you can manage anxiety?
Yeah, because I've got chronic anxiety at this very moment.
Okay, all right. So the first thing is noticing it. You've noticed it and you've named it. You drop the struggle with it. You know why it's there. It's there because we've got technical problems and they're going to be sorted out by someone else. We can't sort out the technical problems. That's what they're there to do. Notice it, name it, stand back from it, drop the struggle with it.
I've got a solution.
Go on.
We'll go to a break, and then Corey can come in and as Coldplay would say, fix you. It's 20 to 10.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Keir Starmer's under pressure over his handling of the Iran issue, but why are his critics so desperate for Britain to join the war? Plus details of the government plan to give illegal migrants 40 grand.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
You've probably been with the same energy supplier for decades. And why wouldn't you be? Loyalty matters. But lately, bigger hasn't always felt better. You've probably dealt with long waits and endless automated menus in search of someone who can actually help. Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. Our people focus on the most important thing, you. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which? A record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
Right then, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life? Anglers, ramblers, climbers, five-a-siders, surfers, gamers, bikers, hang gliders, book clubbers. Are we up for it? Let's go all in against cancer, all in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
At PensionBee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident when investing your capital is at risk.
Amazon offers term time working to their employees, like Anton, who's home to look after his daughters during their holidays.
Hello?
To him, this is the best sound in the world. Actually, maybe that's the best sound of all. Now that's term time working. Offered at Amazon. 10 weeks off guaranteed per year. Mix of paid holiday and unpaid time off. Conditions apply.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:43. Now, the breaking news on LBC is that we have fixed Sian Williams' earpiece and she can actually hear, which I'm sure Luke in Bromley will be very relieved at. Thanks for your patience, Luke. Do you want to start again?
I'll start again, yes. So for me, anxiety is a big deal every day. I actually was diagnosed with Parkinson's in my mid-30s. 11 years on, I find probably, sometimes I just can't step out of the house, and if I do, I freeze. And, for exercise, I feel driving or I drive myself in some wood somewhere where I know people can't see me, walking, for example. Heartbeat races and all sorts. If you just feel like someone who's watching from a distance, and they're not being horrible, but they're judging and trying to work out what's wrong, and they feel sorry and empathy and things like that, and it's too much to handle. I get it amongst crowds and people as well, and off the train and so on. So it's quite a big deal. Now, 3 things that I do to try and help, and I'm phoning really to maybe help people understand people with anxiety and also people with it, of course, including Parkinson's. Three things I do is, if it helps, is the first one is my faith, my Christian faith. I find a lot of comfort from that. Obviously, that's where help comes from. Number two is I do actually do my best to get out there as much as I can. In terms of put myself in the middle of situations so that I don't hide, but I actually expose myself. So like phoning now and phoning LBC. That's great help because it enables me to speak to a lot of people. It's probably one of the most fearful things, and you don't know what's coming and so on. But you try and push yourself, really, I suppose. And the third thing is I set up a business, and really that's sort of the last thing you'd think of doing when you have Parkinson's, because it's about 39 diseases in one, including anxiety. But I did it, and obviously achieved quite a bit. And so I was spoken to in a number of times, because obviously
cleaning business, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Cleaning, helping mothers back into work.
Gosh.
End up helping 330 mothers back into work and 40 fathers over 5-6 years' time. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, and I won UK Entrepreneur of the Year at the UK Business Awards, amongst other things.
Really?
But, yeah.
Gosh, Luke. I mean, that is really. Thank you so much for ringing in. That is inspirational. And you've said a few things there that I'd like to pick up on, if that's all right with you. The first is you are aware of other people's expectations and judgments when you go out, and that can cause you anxiety, and that you notice when that stuff comes up in you. You notice what your body's doing, what your brain is doing, the thoughts that pop into your head. But I think what's really important, and thank you for giving advice to other people, because I think this works in all circumstances. You have curiosity about the world and the people around you. You are connecting with other people, and you are compassionate, which you can clearly see in the job that you have chosen to do. Curiosity, connection, compassion. And those sound to me like really good values to hold to, as well as your faith and wanting to be in nature. And there are lots of things, real positive things, that it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you go back to when you are feeling anxious. You recognise the anxiety.
By helping other people.
Yeah.
I realised I was let go by my company of bank that I used to work for when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, sent to a bus to the job centre in Bromley. And I sent it with a letter which said you can have every benefit going because you can't have Parkinson's, it just gets worse. But I never showed that letter. I said I want to start a company. I want to employ the people downstairs and clean the towers in the distance, which is Canary Wharf.
Yeah.
And within 9 months we were cleaning 5 towers and went on to do other stuff.
Yeah,
But it was a case of saying, I'm not going to be a number, but I'm going to make a difference in other people's lives.
Yes.
We ran the company a bit like a charity, really. It was sort of like, didn't make a lot of profit, but we helped hundreds of people back into work and get step up in life. And so looking at other people helped me to help them.
Yes.
We helped each other. In fact, I used to tell my business coach, I used to say, one day I'm going to get in the LBC studio and chair, but not happened yet, but one day.
Well done. I mean, it sounds as well like you're not being, and this is something you see in a lot of people who say, I'm not going to be defined by this thing I have.
Yeah.
Because actually what's inside me, and the things that I notice, as I said, is curiosity, connection and compassion in you. What's inside me, my values, are the thing that's me, not a diagnosis.
Luke, thank you very much indeed for
much.
phoning in. Always good to talk to you. Melanie is in Islington. Hello, Melanie.
Hi. I'm sorry. I'm a bit nervous, but a bit teary.
It's all right. Just go slowly.
It's all right, Melanie. You've got two very sensitive people.
Yeah.
Well, the gentleman that just spoke, I listened to him. So, I suffer with anxiety, and I find that, I don't know if anyone else does, I find that sometimes I have to hide how I'm feeling.
Yes.
Because I keep thinking I'm being judged.
Okay.
And I've got polymyalgia, and then I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia.
Right.
So, and I'm going through something really, I'm going through a really bad divorce as well. So I'm always trying to
There's
put
a lot on. Yeah.
It's really brave face on, but when I close the front door, it's just that's when I let go. And I don't know why, but if I'm okay, why do they suddenly, it just all comes back down on me, and then
yes.
I can feel my chest, and then I get hot. You know when you send it back the palms, and then my brain, it just, I try to do the breathing exercises, okay, but then I can't breathe.
Okay. Can I ask a question, Melanie? When you get this feeling, is it panic? Would you say it's a feeling of panic when the sort of body and your thoughts are racing and feeling like they're taking over a bit? Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Have you tried doing something as a grounding exercise because sometimes it can be hard to sort of focus on the breath when you're in that state, when your mind's just spinning and you feel a bit panicky. And something that we do is called a grounding exercise. It's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what this does is it just roots you in the present for a bit. So rather than sort of being stuck in the past and worrying about that or fearful of the future, it sort of puts you here and now. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch. Have you heard that? 2 things you can taste, 1 thing you can feel. And that, because you're concentrating on something else, that gets you in a position where you can then start using your breath. And it's important to regulate your breath because that starts something called the parasympathetic system. When your nervous system is going like the clappers, the parasympathetic system is the thing that just calms it down. And I wonder, Melanie, whether there are people around you that support you or whether you feel you can go out and connect. Are there people that can help?
There are, but I'm talking to you, and you know my leg, it's just like going up, and it's just like, because I get when I get my anxiety, and my brain is working overtime now, but I have a lovely family and a lovely friends, but I feel like I'm a burden.
You're not a burden.
I am now, because then I put a brave face on and then I come home and I sort of like let it go, and I'm thinking I'm really not good inside because it's just really hard because I feel like everything is crashing around me.
But they might want to know that, Melanie. I think if and they might be wanting to support. They may be feeling that anyway. And you saying this is tough. It's okay to say this is tough. I'm feeling it. It's really tough at the moment. Things are hard, and I need some help. It's not weak. It's reaching for the outstretched hand. Those outstretched hands are there. People do want to help. I would also say if you're feeling panicky or experiencing that panic, it might just be worth a visit to the GP as well, just to check everything physically is okay. But make sure you've got those sort of systems and support mechanisms in place. Anxiety is not your fault. It is there to keep you safe. It's just sometimes it misreads the room and gets things wrong. It can be switched on when it's not meant to be.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
right.
Melanie, thank you very much
Good luck.
indeed. Right, a text question here from Teresa. I would love to ask Dr. Williams a question about her thoughts about anxiety starting in the body, where emotional memories live as in a state of background alarm, as written about by Dr. Russell Kennedy and Bessel van der Kolk. It is their view you can't think your way out of anxiety, and as a chronic I can't say this catastrophizer, would love to know her thoughts.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you very much for mentioning Bessel van der Kolk. He is amazing. If you haven't read The Body Keeps the Score, Iain, I advise you and your listeners to do so, because you're absolutely right. The body can hold on to traumatic experiences. Trauma comes from the Greek, I think. I know some of your learned listeners will say it's actually Latin. I don't do classics. But
don't worry, I have no clue.
Okay, but it means wound. And that is what it is. It is a wound. And if that wound isn't healing properly, sometimes when a wound doesn't heal properly and the scar goes all tight and nasty and hard, but sometimes wounds can heal if you look after them well and you soften them and lean into them and look after them and that sort of thing. That's what we ought to be doing to the wound to our soul, because trauma, especially early trauma, can be a wound to our soul and it will show up in our body. But I think, as I've been saying all along, we need to be kind to ourselves and recognise that in ourselves. We are very bad, I think, as a nation, as individuals, at being self-compassionate. We're brilliant at being self-critical. We can beat ourselves up all the time because that voice is very easy to go to. And then what happens is, you're absolutely right, you catastrophize. You think, what's wrong with me? Right, I'll think my way out of this. You can't think your way out of it. That's why, as the book says, it's not just about thinking, it is about the body. It is about movement. If you move your body, you get all these wonder chemicals, something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor in the brain, GABA, all these wonder chemicals that reset your threat brain, that reset your body. We need to move. We need to get out into nature. Even a small bit of green can help reset our system. We need to breathe. Slower. We breathe too quickly when we're anxious. All these things can help. And then we need to act. We need to program it, put it in our day, make sure we schedule it in. Often when we're too anxious and catastrophizing, we're not thinking about how we can calm ourselves. And we need to go to the body and the behaviour to do that.
I worked that out very early on in my career at LBC when one day, I think it was actually in my first programme, the whole phone system went down and I had to talk for 10 minutes. And of course, you panic. And so your brain starts whirring and doesn't communicate with your mouth properly. And eventually I learned the way to cope with anything like that is to speak just that little bit more slowly to allow your brain to communicate with your mouth, and that stops you panicking, which, if you think about it, is a pretty obvious thing to do. But in the moment when it happens for the first time, thinking, oh my God. I know,
because you're on threat. I mean, it happened to me a lot when I would be news reading and there would be a big news event and suddenly the autocue would go down. And you're right, you instantly speed up because you've got all these stress hormones suddenly giving you a boost, because what it's doing is fight, flight, freeze, way, and that makes you talk faster. So you're right, take a moment, stand back, look at the bigger picture.
Right, we've got Sarah in Wimborne next. Hello, Sarah. Are you there, Sarah?
Hello, thanks for taking my call.
Hi.
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Carry on.
Hello. Good. Well, I'm nearly 60, neurodivergent, I've realised, some autism and ADHD, worse since 55, and I have some complex post-traumatic stress. But I live on my own, a woman, and for my sins, I've got a flat roof, the house and the garage, and I've had the roof redone but bodged. So I'm very, very anxious now about the situation. I have some damp, some water coming in sometimes, trying to find a flat roofer that I trust, because my trust has gone. It's sort of really with me all the time. And it sort of colours the rest of my life, really. I think already having the complex CPTDS already, doesn't help either. And being older and neurodivergent, I think people realise that you're vulnerable, you're a woman on your own. I can't get up on a ladder, to get on the roof when they're doing it either. So,
okay.
I don't know how to, I do get very anxious. I mean, the thing about
No, go on. What were you going to say, Sarah? The thing about the...
No, it's all right. It's okay.
Okay. So I think what you're saying is it sounds quite isolating for you at the moment. Am I right? Does it feel quite lonely where you are at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And has there been...
My partner that's died now. I've got friends, but we've all got our own issues,
Right. And is it that you don't feel that you can call one of those friends and say, I need some help with this, getting my roof fixed, and it's causing me some issues, and will you be around for a little bit to help me through it? Does that feel too hard to say? Or do you think you might be able to?
I think they aren't that near. I have friends, but they're not near. So if I have a builder come, it's having that support, I think, and maybe a male support.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have friends that generally meet up because we've all got our own problems.
Yeah. Well, good luck. I think it's about maybe reaching out to someone closer in your community, Sarah, and I wish you all the very best because it's difficult when you lose trust, but you can rebuild it in trusted neighbours, I think.
Well, Sarah, thank you very much indeed for your call. Apologies to everyone that we couldn't get to. There's loads of calls coming in, but we'll have you back another day.
I'd love to come back. Thank you so much, and thanks for your interest.
Sian's book is called The Power of Anxiety, How to Ride the Worry Wave. It's published by Allen and Unwin in paperback at $14.99. Well, thank you very much indeed, Sian. Really enjoyed the last hour. And I know from all of the texts that are coming in, everyone has too. So excellent. Right, thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'm back back on Monday from 7. Coming up on LBC, it's Tom Slater at 1. But right now, here's Ben Kentish.
Thank you very much, Didi, and hello, and a very, very good evening to you this Thursday night. Welcome to Ben Kentish here on LBC. Coming up.
It's not going to happen overnight, but we will not stop until our people are safe.
Keir Starmer called an emergency press conference today to defend his handling of the conflict in the Middle East and stand by his decision not to allow Britain to get directly involved on the strikes in Iran. But he's been getting it in the neck all week, hasn't he, from both Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage, who seem to be desperate for Britain to join America in Israel in bombing the Iranian regime.